All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Indio study session. Actually, is it closed? Oh yeah, we changed that. Excuse me. We are a closed session. Call to order, please. And can I have a roll call?
Yes, Mayor. For the record, all council members are present except for Councilmember Ramos Amit and Councilmember Elaine Holmes.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
None, Mayor.
All right. Well, item number 3, City Attorney.
Yes, we will adjourn into closed session to consider the items on the closed session agenda, items 3.1 through 3.6. Great.
I'm all ready to go to study session.
I know. I've been ready since 3 when you showed up.
I've been ready since 3. Oh. You're ready. Ms. Sanchez, we're ready? Okay. I will call the order the City of Indio regular meeting, joint meeting with Indio Water Authority, and also a special meeting. My name is Wayman Furman. I'm Mayor of the city. I'll be chairing this meeting. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Present.
Councilmember Miller.
Present.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Present.
And Mayor Furman.
Present. We do not have anyone to do the invocation, so I ask everyone to please stand and join us for the pledge of the flag. Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All righty, so I will ask for the public and everyone in attendance to bear with us. We are going to go a little bit out of order. So now I'm going to, actually, let's go to the city attorney report on closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council met in closed session for the items listed on the closed session agenda, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you. So now I'm going to move over to the special item, which is a discussion item 3.1 to adopt resolution number 1036 of the City Council of the City of Indio approving the application for the Transformative Climate Communities Implementation Grant Funds. And our Director of Public Works, Tim, will also be handling this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item was intended to be a consent for you to approval, for the approval of a resolution to allow us to submit the application for the Transformative Community Climate. So would like your approval so we can proceed. And this is a request for a grant in the vicinity of $35 million approximately for the Jewel community. So would love to have you approve us to proceed.
Great. Thank you for your work on this, Mr. Russell. This is a excellent opportunity for that community. So we're looking forward to it. So I don't know if do we take a roll call vote on this or do I take a motion?
Yes, you take a motion and just the clerk, we don't have anybody on Zoom to speak on this item. Great. Then you would need a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll entertain the motion to adopt this resolution.
All motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz, a second by Councilmember Holmes. Can I vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
And Mayor Furman.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you, sir. Great. So now we'll move on back to the regular session agenda and we'll go on to item 5.1, a fundraiser donation for the Elks Lodge. It's a presentation. Hold on.
Mike needs the mic. Yep, right side up. Well, what I'd like to do is just to let you know that it's been going on for about 10 years now that the Elks Lodge has been doing work. We've had pancake breakfasts and other functions to give money for the K-9 unit. And what we'd like to do tonight is to present you with a check for $3,100 that was raised from our last function.
Thank you very much.
Don't try to cash this one.
You're on.
Okay. Thank you very much. The Elks Club's been a great community partner with us. Our K-9 program is entirely funded by donations when it comes to our dogs, some of our vehicles, and their food, medical bills, all of that stuff. It's also a great time. So the next pancake breakfast, we want to see everyone there. It's always a full house. Get there early. We put on a great show.
Already got the date set for next year.
And I do want someday to hold the title of Exalted Ruler because that's the coolest title there is.
It's not as glamorous.
No, don't tell them that.
Mayor?
I just want to say thank you to the Elks for being a partner with the city and our community for a number of years. The Elks is involved in a lot of community fundraisers and outreach and philanthropy in our community. And for you all to continue to have this annual event for our canines that not only benefit the city of Indio and our residents and keeping us safe, but the community as a whole, because they do partner with other organizations in our community. So thank you to your work in our community. And thank you, Chief, for being the head of our police department and keeping our canine unit funded. Thank you. Congratulations.
Just wanted to say thank you as well to the Elks Lodge for your continued support and your continued support of our canine unit. We really appreciate your hard work and your continued dedication to this effort. Thank you. Thanks.
Pancakes once a year, right? Just
Yeah.
Just once a year. Well, you know, thank you. Thanks. Picture time. Picture time.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. One more.
Hold on. More coming.
Man of the house is in there. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, don't.
I didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. All right, now we'll move on to item number 6, which is report on city council, external and internal boards. And if our Councilmember Holmes is ready.
Sure.
Kick us off.
Absolutely. I think the meeting of note was my Transportation Commission meeting. So much going on right now. First of all, the 60 freeway, which we've all been traveling for the last couple of years, and all the lane closures and all the craziness is open, fully and completely open. I took it the other day. God, it was a straight shot. It was a wonderful drive, not all those crazy turns. So just to let you know, that 60 freeway through the Badlands is open. I think I mentioned in the past the CV synchronization program, that's a mouthful, which is at the point of the installation of conduit and technology. You know, that's to synchronize all of our signals throughout the majority on Highway 111 of the desert, and we're continue to move forward with that. Every city is going to have a personal traffic management center, and every city will also have a local traffic operations center. So we'll all be able to manage it, but it'll be managed at such a level that you'll be able to go from one end to the other, and the signals will be synchronized and we don't have to stop at every single one of them. In terms of fiber optic cable, 36 miles in phase 1 and 90 plus miles in phase 2, I guess, are as a result of that. CVAG's purchase of that through Corning is one of the largest purchases with Corning, so that's substantive. One of the issues that has come forth, Assembly Bill 2237, Measure A, which is our funds that funds roads and transportation. The state is looking at, you know, taking control of those funds and taking local decision making away from us. We had extensive discussion about that. We have significant concerns. We have things, if you stop and think about the Jackson Street interchange, think about Cook Street, right? We have the Acrisure Arena coming in, lots of people coming into our valley. So I think each local jurisdiction needs to be able to, and I think we agreed and voted on the fact within the CVAG Transportation Commission that we needed to oppose Assembly Bill 2237 and maintain the decision-making capability that we have had all these years. Separate from that, today we attended, I think most of us, all of us were there, BuzzBox. So BuzzBox, for those of you that don't know, started out as a very small business and now have their corporate offices, very significant worldwide company here in the city of Indio, a very cool company. Many of you have had any of the BuzzBox drinks. They're wonderful, but that being said, they're fully sustainable. And I'm going to defer to Mayor Pro Tem, because I'm going to bet that he captured all of that. But everything from the cap that's made from sugarcane, the labeling, the box, what's inside is all organic, and it's all produced in India. And it was really a wonderful ribbon cutting for this facility up at the Target Center, what used to be the Target Center on Jackson and 42. And they're going through an expansion. And what was really neat about it is the relationship they now have with the Firebirds in the new Acrisure Arena. So it was just a very cool day. Also, too, just a shout out, last Saturday was the whole concert, second Saturday night. You know what? It was hot, but it was fun. You guys, come on out. We had people dancing. The music was a lot of fun. Those of us that kind of have that whole 80s thing, we had a blast. We all had a blast. And so we have one more coming up in July. It's salsa. And I don't care how hot. Salsa's hot. It's going to be hot out there. There's water, beer, wine. Please come on out and enjoy us. It's the second Saturday night in July. Mayor, that concludes.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Amit, do you have a report for us? You ready?
Well, you may have stolen my thunder because you did an interview for the Riverside County Fair National Date Festival. The new operator of the fairgrounds is Pickering Events, LLC. I'm proud to announce that the Riverside County Fair will be back February 17th through 26th of 2023. And Pickering Events is known for some of their partnerships with the Northwest Washington Fair Association, and also that he has been on the board of directors for the International Association of Fairs. Mr. Pickering has served as the CEO of the Alameda County Fairgrounds and the Deputy General Manager of the OC Fair in Costa Mesa and the CEO of the California State Fair and Exposition in Sacramento. And if that doesn't get you excited enough, I don't know what will. But we all love our fair, and we're so happy to have partnered with someone that's going to help us really grow. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember. And just for the record, I don't think anybody can steal your thunder. So we'll move on to Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of my committees were active. One of them with Mayor Pro Tem was the JPA for the waste transfer station with the city of Coachella. Basically, we went over the budget. It's an annual event that we do. Talks about the waste and what we bring in, and each city divides the revenue that comes in from the tipping fees, which is going to be a substantial amount of money more this year than it was last year. And then we talked about the contract and their annual increase that comes forward, which we'll be talking about later on. I'm sure the Mayor Pro Tem will be talking a little bit more about that. ECAC for IID, we were talking about the new services that they're looking at providing, and actually what they're going to do about rolling blackouts. And I could tell you the rest of this, but you can't make this stuff up. I actually had a blackout at my house, and so my Wi-Fi went down, and I didn't get to be the rest of the meeting. So they're going to talk about it, and Ray Trejo and I are sitting on that. But there are going to be some issues coming forward here very shortly, especially with Lake Mead having some of the issues that they have and coming forward. So they don't anticipate any blackouts, as nothing set and scheduled, but I would not be surprised if we did have some here in Indio and the rest of some of the Coachella Valley. So please be careful and make sure that you're looking forward to a hot summer, but at the same time that there could be some issues that you need to be prepared and ready for. Make sure you have plenty of water, ice, and other stuff to make sure in case you need that if it's at night too. So, and we will, I'm sure pretty soon, City Manager talk about cooling stations. I know we usually have that at our senior center and others. So some of our seniors or other people that might need that, you can look at not only the County of Riverside, but also the City of Indio to look if there's some cooling stations you might need to be able to utilize. Like the rest of my council members, we were at Scott Bailey's retirement party from Desert Sands Unified School District. Great man, moving on to get to see his first grandchild. We have a new superintendent of schools, Kelly Mae Ballmer. We wish her well, but Scott was a breath of fresh air when he first came here and did a great job of supporting our schools and here in the city of Indio. And we were able to get the Dick Oliphant School up, the first elementary school built in the Coachella Valley in some time here right in the great city of Indio. So wish him well and our new superintendent of schools well. as Councilmember Holmes and the rest of us were attending the Buzz Box. If you haven't seen it, it is quite a mechanism, the way they have this thing put together. He brought his organization here because he lives in the city of Indio, wanted to support the city of Indio, and brought his manufacturing here. And it has exploded with not only the arena that we have here locally, but he's in Costco. He's in every venue that's out there, including our own Coachella Fest and Stagecoach Music Festival. So Rod and his team, we want to thank them for not only investing in the city of Indio, but also creating jobs and opportunities here, and wish him well. And then the last thing, Dr. Carry-On Foundation, the Scholarships Awards, the mayor was with myself and that, the Dr. Carry-On Foundation. He was the start of the hospital. He dedicated his life to making sure that the Coachella Valley and the city of Indio had medical services, and he wanted to make sure he left a legacy. So he left a scholarship fund that's run here locally to give individuals that are from the Coachella Valley scholarships from Hispanic descent. And they gave out a little over $132,000 this Sunday over at Fantasy Springs Casino for a lot of great students, including 3 from the city of Indio. So great to see, and a continued support of our individuals from an individual that was a pioneer here in the city of Indio. And then lastly, if we could, Mayor, we had 2 police officers in El Monte who were viciously gunned down, Corporal Michael Paradis and Officer Joseph Santana. If we could hold a moment of silence and adjourn the meeting in their honor. And also, we lost one of our very own, Jeffrey Paul Levin, who was the head of the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce as our chairman of the board. Unfortunately, he had a battle with cancer and he beat it. And unfortunately, he had what they believe is a massive heart attack and he passed on. So our wishes and condolences to all the families and all those individuals that have lost their life senselessly, and for those we know that have given so much to this community. So that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for joining us today. Last weekend, I attended the WELL conference on water issues in Pico Rivera. Several people presented data that corresponded to the changes due to climate change currently, along with the more extreme weather patterns and continued droughts. We've seen minimum temperatures rising as well as the maximum temperatures rising. So with the minimums rising, that means we'll see less snow in our state, and that also affects the way water is absorbed and collected throughout the environment. The changes are also causing changes in agriculture, with crops now changing in growth cycles in response to the changing environment. There's predicted to be losses in crop production in the future due to extreme weather, changing weather patterns, and increase in pest issues due to increases in temperature. So it's just something that we all need to keep in mind as we are in an economy that depends heavily on agriculture, and prices are already rapidly increasing. Last week, I also attended the CVAG Energy and Environment Committee. We discussed IREN, which is the Inland Regional Energy Network. So this was formed in order to bring in tax dollars from customers that pay SoCal Edison and SoCal Gas for the public charge fees that we pay in our utilities. We used to be part of a bigger region, and so a lot of that pool of money ended up being spent in other bigger cities often. And so this regional energy network is going to allow us to collect those fees locally and spend them locally as well. And this is going to add up to about $1 million a year that we can fund for workforce development and training efforts throughout our region. We also discussed the new financing options for electrical infrastructure devised by our city manager, Mr. Montgomery, where we would have a local surcharge to pay upfront costs for new energy infrastructure and have developers pay their share as they develop. This would save us some time by having those funds immediately available to start building this much needed infrastructure in our city and to keep up with the development demands. I also got to attend the ribbon cutting for BuzzBox today, and they have a really amazing manufacturing facility here in Indio, providing a lot of our locals with good manufacturing jobs. They're also very sustainable. They use locally sourced natural ingredients, biodegradable packaging, and they're always striving to lead the way in sustainability. So we thank them and their team for doing such a great job of representing our community well in the drinks industry, and we congratulate them on their success. And that's all I have for today. Thanks, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your report. I had a couple of my committees that were active, and I'll start with the CVAG Homelessness Committee that we had this morning, which was a lot of information, but it was great. One of the more notable items was a point in time count. And what that is when we have folks go out and they count the unsheltered folks in all of our communities. And the difference is this year, there were a lot more questions asked of the folks who were out there. And in the city of Indio, we went up 22 people of unsheltered to 105, which is, you hear the number 105, but 105, we're not doing that bad. And the reason why I say that, because we have over 300 of folks who are homeless, who are sheltered in our shelters that we take care of here in the city of Indio, and we get them wraparound services to get them on the right paths. And so we do take care of folks here. However, one of my questions and concerns were the migration of unsheltered folks from Los Angeles County who were moving towards Orange County and Riverside County. And if you travel on the 10 freeway, you'll see those encampments on the 10 freeway in our pass and our banning area. And that's concerning to me, folks coming to this area. So how are we getting in front of that? And that was one of the questions I had. And that accounts for those numbers. And it's a very complex topic, and there's many a plethora of reasons why folks go unsheltered. However, one of the reasons is affordable housing. But right now in our county, we have 1,200 permits out right now for affordable housing. And that's a good sign. In the city of Indio, we have affordable housing construction underway right now on Highway 111 in Jefferson, the Royal Crossings, and we have a couple in planning. So we're doing our share here in the city of Indio, and that's great news. However, we still have work to do. But I want to thank all of our nonprofits, our faith-based community, our law enforcement community, our quality of life, our mental health folks for getting out there and really helping folks who need the assistance. But I just want to remind everyone that the job's never done. And that's what we do. So sometimes it seems repetitive. You take care of one and you get two, but that's why we're out doing that work. So we appreciate the work that everyone's doing to curb homelessness in our communities. So I also had a CVAC public safety committee meeting. We did have a presentation on Mylar balloons by IID. And so since we're talking about power and infrastructure, that's a very important topic for the reason that the materials that those Mylar balloons are made out of are attracted to our power lines. And right now we cannot afford our infrastructure going down or being damaged. We can't afford folks losing power, especially in the summer months. So there's an assembly bill to curb the sale and manufacturing of Mylar balloons in California. So we recommended that our committee send a letter of support to the state that we support that, especially in the Coachella Valley. We may not stop them all, but we have to really have that conversation and get the outreach out there and curb those. We also had a presentation on the county's coordinated efforts to provide services to asylum seekers here in our county. And I have to thank the county and once again, our nonprofits and everyone who are, giving a hand in handling the situation. Riverside County, our Border Patrol, our nonprofits who are providing those wraparound services and getting the asylum seekers who we receive here in our county. And we keep them here for about 3 to 4 days, and then we get them onto their sponsors. And they are screened for COVID. And if they test positive, they are what's the term again? Quarantine. There it is. They are quarantined and they will be returned back to their home where they came from. So that's per Title 42, I believe it's 42. And so, we do have folks coming in our county. Right now, the county has contracted 275 rooms in our county in Indio, Marietta, and I believe Blythe. So that effort is still underway. And just thank the county for really getting out in front of that and providing those services. And last but not least, in that public safety committee meeting, it was a discussion that took place about what's going on in our world of active shooters. So we will be adding that to our next agenda, and hopefully have maybe our police chief or our sheriff's department come in and really reassure the community what we're doing and also the kind of services we're providing the folks so we don't have those incidents in our community. And I also had a IID CVAC meeting, And, it's a lot. We're hearing a lot about power, but I just wanted to put out there and please share, conserve. We have to continue to conserve, especially in these summer months, so we can prevent some of those blackouts or brownouts that we might possibly have. So if you do not follow Indio Live, follow Indio Live. We do put out IIDs, conserve alerts, and how you can conserve. It's going to be a team effort, but we can get through this. We're resilient folks. A lot of us, we're from this area, so we know how to make it work, but we do not want folks losing power. So please conserve. And also, IID is going to have a new text messaging system where they're going to be communicating that outreach as well to the ratepayers. So that's also another good way, a means of communication. But we can't stress the importance of conserving power. And as far as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned about our infrastructure and moving into the future, about redundancy in our infrastructure and about development. We're still in those communications with La Quinta and Coachella. Our city managers are working with the consultants and figure out the proper mechanism we could put in place to get those funds. So that's it for IID. And along with Councilmember Miller, I attended the Dr. Carrion Foundation. I want to say thank you to Ricardo Loretta for heading that right now. He's such a good guy. That's such a great thing. I think they give away upwards of 50 scholarships from students in the Coachella Valley and the Palo Verdes Valley, and it's such a great organization. And it does keep the legacy of Dr. Carrion alive. He was a trailblazer not only in Southern California, but in Indio. So he's also the founder of our JFK Hospital, where a lot of us were born. So, it's such history here with him, but to keep his legacy alive with this foundation is phenomenal and is well appreciated. So thank you to that foundation. I also attended the retirement party for Scott Bailey, our former superintendent. I know we're going to be in good hands with Dr. Vollmer, but we're going to miss Scott. He was great to us. A lot of our kids came up under his reign. So, but he's going to go be with his first grandchild. So it's great for him. So thank you, Mr. Bailey, for your service to our city. And our committee, I'm sorry. And I also attended the BuzzBox ribbon cutting with the rest of the council. And congratulations to Scott Vanderboss and his staff over there. That's just going to be a great business for our city. It's going to provide a lot of livable wage paying jobs for folks here. And it's just an innovative process of what he's doing. And one of the fascinating things, which I love the most, everyone knows I wear Indio on my sleeve. On every piece of his product, it says manufacturer made in Indio. And that's great. So thank you to them. And we're looking forward to a continued partnership with them and possibly expanding in the future. And like Councilmember Miller alluded to, we've had some tragedies in our country, and we will conclude our meeting in memory of those folks. And, we recently lost 5 Marines in the Imperial County from an aircraft incident. And so that's just so tragic. We just lost 2 police officers in El Monte. And we also lost a partner in Jeff Levine. So we will conclude this meeting in their memory. So that concludes my report, and we'll move on to the next item. All right. The next item is item number 7, city manager reports and information.
Thank you, Mayor. Mentioned were the cooling centers. There are 4 in Indio, just as an FYI, the library, the senior center, if you're of senior age, Martha's Village, and the rescue mission. Also, Councilmember Holmes mentioned our second Saturday. We will be back on July 9th in the heat with salsa. We do want to start at 7 o'clock, an hour later. That will help, but there'll be some water and fun. And we look forward to the community being there on July 9th here downtown at 7 o'clock. Also, we do ask the community for patience as we move forward on the season of construction of roads. It's all good news. You see this already taking place on Highway 111. We do appreciate everybody's patience. There'll be more throughout the community in the coming months. So it's the good thing, but also somewhat of an inconvenience. And we are doing what they asked and improving these roadways throughout the community. Finally, I'd like to turn some time over to our Human Resources Director, Andrew Ensorian, as well as Police Chief Mike Washburn for a brief report regarding employee retention, specifically related to the police department. It's a brief report, but I think it'd be very helpful for not only the city council, but the community. Chief, are you going to kick that off?
Yes.
All right. Am I driving the presentation? Oops. Here we go. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mike Washburn, and I am your police chief. Tonight, HR Director Andrew Ansorian and I will be presenting you some information on police officer recruiting and hiring efforts. And I want to say before we begin that Andrew and I are very proud of the innovation that our team has shown and the work they've done to meet our hiring goals. So really the purpose of our presentation is to provide you some facts and data regarding recruiting and retention efforts. It all really starts with the team. If the team itself, it's very innovative to bring this group of folks together. It's led by one of our sergeants, includes police officers, code enforcement, dispatch, our management analyst, HR analyst, and then there's many other staff that we need to bring in. So together they've really brought the stuff together that we're going to talk about with regards to recruiting. Beginning at the 12 o'clock on the wheel there, that's outreach. Andrew's going to cover that element a little bit later. The next one down, going clockwise, academy. As you're aware, we began sponsoring candidates into both Riverside County, RSO's police academy, as well as San Bernardino several years ago, instead of relying solely on laterals and pre-service candidates. This has really expanded our pool of police officer candidates from what we were able to tap into previously. Recognition. It really boils down to the fact that we work at IPD to remain in the national spotlight for innovation. And we've been recognized by President Obama's White House, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Police Executive Research Forum, and even the RAND Corporation for the work that we do. Testing. Really, this started back in 2017 when we noticed that we were losing an unacceptable rate of brand new student officers in our field training program. So we switched to a scientific selection method, which Andrew's going to cover a little bit later on. Branding. There are about 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the U.S., so we really need to distinguish ourselves. What makes us unique? Besides our city, our festivals, the recognition, and really our culture, which is, again, something I'll cover next. The next slide is going to cover it in more, but really it's an embodiment of our motto, which is our community, our commitment. Incentives. This really is, in addition to paid academy time and relocation expenses, competitive salaries. We're also tossing around some additional innovative things that can help us, again, move that ball forward. It's a very difficult time to hire police officers, which Andrew's going to cover a little later. Career counseling. We looked at opportunities to say yes to our candidates. So there may be an occasion where we get a candidate that's really not quite ready to be a police officer, even though that's what they applied for. We've redirected several of those folks to try something else and then work their way into it. Maybe a maturity issue or what have you. But we have several folks, and we really look at all phases of the IPD as being training ground for the police officer. So our culture, we really are looking to hire the right people. If you look at the photograph, and I'll start with that, There's a bunch of friendly officers there. They all have smiles on their faces. We are a community policing agency who should have that guardian perspective. While two of our officers here are our SWAT officers, we don't show those warrior type photos in any recruiting material because that's not what they primarily do. There are times that police officers have to switch to that role, but the bulk of their work really is hopefully with a smile on their face. Our core values are integrity, professionalism, service, respect, which mirrors really the 3 Ps, which is polite, professional, and progressive. We always want to look for ways that we can improve. Some of the solutions and results that are kind of driving that culture that we've done strategically is moving more toward a merit-based selection process for our specialty assignments. We've focused on a return to work program for injured officers, which has allowed us to cut workers' comp costs 2 years in a row. We improved our internal investigations by utilizing third-party investigators outside the agency, which helps us eliminate bias. We've enhanced officer and public safety by starting a Narcan program. We've had quite a few saves with people who are overdosed with narcotics. We're the first department in the region to utilize a behavioral health specialist that actually goes on the street with our officers. The county has been so impressed with how our officers operate in collaboration with them that we are the training ground for the entire county. So when they hire a new office or new behavioral health specialist is going to operate somewhere else in the county, they start in Indio to figure out how we do things. Critical review of use of force is imperative to help keep us safe and make sure we're doing the right thing. So we require the articulation of legal authority, lawful purpose, and that the force used is compliant with law, policy, consistent with training, and we go one step deeper, which is good tactics. We also have adopted Police Executive Research Forum's ICAP program for use of force, which is integrated communications and tactics. What has all this led to? A decrease in officer-involved shooting. So if you look at the last 20 years of our department and what has occurred, we've had 0 officer-involved shootings in 5 out of the last 6 years, whereas the previous 7, we'd had 14 officer-involved shootings. I don't mean to imply that anything was wrong with any of those shootings, but I can tell you that properly selected, disciplined, and trained officers at their core believe in the sanctity of human life, and they have the skills and training in both individual and team tactics, which give them the ability to safely avoid legally justified deadly force encounters. At this point, I'm going to hand this off to Andrew.
Sir. Thank you, Chief. Mayor Furman, City Council members, Andrew Van Surian, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management. Chief and I definitely collaborated on this project along with his team and my staff. I'm going to touch upon outreach. It's an initiative we took very seriously this year. 2 members of that task force are Ben Gutron and is Andre still here? Did he? Well, they were 2 critical members of that task force that got this initiative going. As you'll notice, we visited some career fairs at universities that have criminal justice programs. First time in many, many, many years that we've sent a recruiting team out there. A lot of success. We got 40 interest cards. 40 interest cards may not seem like a lot, but that's 40 attendees who are actually interested in pursuing employment at IPD. So we thought those were very successful, and we're going to continue that mission there. We also started some geolocation advertising, which kind of is more targeted social media advertising, and Andres was a big factor in getting that up and running, and so that helped us get to the audience we needed to. Chief mentioned briefly the science-based approach to testing. This is kind of like our selection process in a snapshot here. It's very rigorous. It's driven by a lot of empirical evidence. There's a couple boxes I want to highlight. The second box that says PIQ/PHS questionnaires, that's a tool that the chief brought in. If you go over another two boxes to ergometrics, that's another research-based assessment tool that evaluates the situational judgment of our candidates. That's something that chief brought in. The next one over to that, it's called BPAD. That's a nationally used validated measure that assesses candidates' ability to handle situations. This in a snapshot is our selection process. It's very rigorous, it's very time consuming, and it's very costly. But we believe it's producing better candidates that we hire, and we're getting less turnover from our trainees. This is a snapshot, a visual of our hiring trends going back to 07, 08. The chart inside the larger chart is IPD hiring trends since 08, 07, 08 to 21, 22. Obviously, we're not done completely with this year, so we might have a couple more we'll add. But you'll notice we're right around 4 to 5 new hires every year. We obviously had a spike in 1920 in hire, but that's our trend. What's more startling is the larger chart there, and that's statewide data. I'd like to thank Manny over at Post at the state. He gave us a lot of very useful data at the state level. If you notice the orange line or reddish orange line, that line is hiring trends from the state since 15-16 to 2021. The problem with this chart is where the blue line crosses the orange line. The blue line are separations. That's a red flag in my world. That indicates we have a labor shortage and more people are leaving than joining the world of law enforcement. That's a problem. And that's not just a problem here in Indio, that's a problem statewide and nationwide. And I'm going to show you some data here later. Hopefully we're doing our best locally, but this is a regional and statewide issue that hopefully can be addressed at the state level. But this is shocking data when we discovered it. The state didn't even realize this existed. With regard to police officer retention, there's been a lot of talk in the media, locally, regionally, and nationwide with regard to police officer turnover. Quite frankly, there is turnover happening nationwide across all occupations. It's called the Great Resignation. I've been in this business 27 years. It's very cyclical. This happens. Unemployment is below 4%. I expect a changing of the tide, if you will, but there are some fundamental things we believe we can do better here in Indio, and those are things that Mr. Montgomery is giving us the green light to pursue. We like data, so we looked at the National PERF organization. It's a respected research institute for law enforcement. When they compared years 19 to 20 to 21 to 20 to 21, they saw an 18% increase in resignations and a 45% increase in retirements. Those are astonishing numbers right there. I believe it's a spike, but they believe it was driven by three main reasons: stresses over the pandemic, the defunding campaigns that occurred over that same time frame, and quite frankly, just some hostility towards law enforcement in certain regions. Excuse me. Here are just some visual representations of the separation trends in Indio. The larger chart on the left is IPD separations going back to 07, 08 to 21, 22. This does not capture all of our separations in 2022 because when I had to do this chart, I had a couple more months left in the fiscal year. But you can see the trend. I think the more important two slides are the ones on the right. The upper right chart is our 6-year separation trend, and you can see the visual slope going upward there in the most recent years. But look at the statewide trend over a similar period of time. We kind of mirror the statewide trend. We lag the state by about a year. They hit their spike a year before us. But we're hoping we go on the downside of this trend in the 22-23 fiscal year. Lastly, we like to do a little bit more going deeper into the data, if you will, and disaggregate the data. This has never been done here in the city of Indio. But Chief and my staff worked tirelessly to try to come up with some reasons why people were leaving. If you'll notice on the left, that chart is representing separations by reasons. Resignation on the left was 6. We didn't know why those people resigned. That could be career change. That could be promotions to another agency. We just weren't able to capture that data when they left. But it just shows some of the reasons. And you'll notice a spike in medical retirements occurred in 1 year. We're seeing some relocations being a primary reason for people leaving the city of Indio. We have a lot of our officers who don't live in the city of Indio, and gas prices creates a challenge financially as well. But if you look at the probationary releases, those have dropped as a ratio of our separations. And that's an attestament to the good selection instrument and scientific-based testing that we've installed. We've weeded out some folks that just weren't going to be good fits in Indio PD. On the right is just a little bit more of the same data going back to 07, 08. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to field any questions that City Council may have.
Council, you have any questions or comments? No, I thank you. I've been in law enforcement for 23 years, and that's a very comprehensive data report, especially to specifically bring it to Indio and compare it to some of the data nationwide and statewide. And, in a nutshell, we're doing pretty good in Indio as far as hiring. And I have to commend our team and our chief for, that process. I've witnessed it during COVID. We've had some challenges. However, the team were able to maneuver and still be able to get folks in for testing, and it's a physical agility test, and they were able to do some things at some of our city facilities. So hats off to the team. And also the chief had mentioned that, when folks may have passed the academy or apply for our police department, they may not be ready to go on the street. And that's just being honest and also protecting our community as well. And I'm very excited that we have opened those opportunities up for CSOs, code enforcement, and traffic for alternative means while they mature into being police officers here in the city. And I'm glad to see that we're also partnering with College of the Desert to really focus on that academy as well. It's a local academy that's going to continue to feed Indio Police Department. So thank you with the innovation and taking us into this next generation of law enforcement. So thank you.
Thank you.
City Manager, do you have any more report?
That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for that. That's great and great information. The next item is item number 8, consent calendar. If no one wishes to pull anything, I would accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, before you take a motion on the consent calendar, on item 8.12, the landscaping and lighting districts, we do have some changes to the engineer's report, and that would be for resolution number 10299. And if I can just, those have been passed out. And if you approve the consent calendar in its entirety, I would ask that you approve item 8.2, resolution 10299, as amended, and that would be for section 2 to read that the engineer's annual levy report as amended and presented, and section 3 that the amended engineer's report, the amended engineer's annual levy report, and that's how that should read. And we will substitute these pages out that we've passed out into that resolution and into that engineer's report that's going to be on file.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the consent calendar as amended in 8.12.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Miller, a second by Mayor Pro Tem of the consent calendar with item 8.12 amended. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
And Mayor Furman.
Aye. Consent calendar passes. Thank you. So we will move on to item number 9, which is public hearings. Item 9.1 is City Council and Indio Water Authority Joint Resolution number 10292 and IWA Resolution number 2022-78, adopting fiscal year 2022-23 operating and capital improvement budget and program and supplemental water supply. And this item will be handled by IWA General Manager Ray Trejo.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. Today, we will be presenting our budget for this coming fiscal year, and Mr. Brian Kinder, Manager of Finance Department, will be presenting our presentation. I'll stand by for any questions right after.
Thank you very much, Ray. I'm Brian Kinder. I'm the Manager of Finance at the IWA. The last thing we did at the study session, we went through the budget and, we looked through it, and there was one item that was added, which was $100,000 for, to add a IWA well site generator maintenance, person. So we added 100,000 to the budget, and for the operating budget, we are now at 25.6 million. So our budget now for just the operating fund, we're going to be at a balanced budget of 25,606,195 in both revenues and expenditures. And for the revenues, we have up there unallocated fund balance. And what that basically is unused revenues from prior years that we're now using, for the budget. But we're not, this is, we're able to cover our expenses with the ongoing revenue. So we're not really dipping into reserves. Those are actually separate set aside funds or accounts that, we would need council approval to draw funds, from there. So this budget doesn't include that. And then we've balanced it. And then the next slide basically shows you our all fund budget, which has our operating fund, our water diff, which is used for capital projects, supplemental water, also capital projects. And then the largest one is the capital program fund. So the total amount that we're asking for to be approved in this budget is $28.8 million. And right now, the total budget revenues minus expenditures, we have about a $905,000 surplus. So that's all that I really have to cover for this budget. We handed out budget books, and then also there's like a more like comprehensive look at the budget. It's actually attached to this agenda. So this is our recommendation for the budget, and that's all that I really have tonight.
All right. So this is a public hearing item. So I will open the public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have any requests to speak or comments for this?
None, Mayor.
I do not have any present. And so I will close the public hearing and open it up to the council for questions or comments or a motion.
I'll motion that the City Council IWA Board conduct a public hearing to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 capital improvement and supplemental water supply programs by joint resolution number 10292 and adopt IWA's recommended operating and capital improvement budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 by resolution number 2022-78.
Second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz, a second by Councilmember Miller. Have a vote, please.
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
And Mayor Furman.
Aye, motion passes.
Mayor, if I could for a quick second.
Yes, sir.
We do need to, because our meetings are together now with the City Council and Indio Water Authority. We do need to discuss later on more about water and availability and with our reclamation board and that. So it's something I think we need to discuss and bring forward is how we're going to be able to supply more water and conserve with Colorado River water being going down, Lake Mead and the other issues coming forward. We talked about a reclamation project and the CVWD said it was too expensive, but I'd rather pay more money for water and have water than have no water.
Yeah.
So we need to have a longer discussion on this and what we can do to utilize that and also to do some more conservation.
Yeah, thank you. City Manager, Ray. Yep.
Yeah, I could speak to that and definitely would work with our city manager. In my past experience working in Metropolitan and other agencies, we did have subcommittees that would address in more detail the water issues, and we'd be happy to come back to you, again, working with our city manager and provide you with a longer-term outlook of what our water supply challenges look like. Again, we're working as a region. You're absolutely right. We have potential local projects. However, those come with challenges, not only financial, but timing. And so we'd be happy to come back to you with the more details as to how we plan to not only meet this year's goals as far as a water supply, but even looking out for the next 10, 20 years, as some of our planning documents have suggested that we have enough water, but we do need to come back to you and show you why and what those assumptions are. I think that's key. Great point.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we'll set up a study session for that. I think that'd be the best way to create that open forum of discussion.
Okay. Righty, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 9.2, is resolution number 10296 to increase solid waste charges for residential and commercial customers for fiscal years 2022-23 through 2026-27, adopting resolution number 10297 levying the annual waste charges for fiscal year 2022-23 and ordering the collection of the residential charges on the county tax roll for fiscal year 2022-23, consideration of the draft amended and restated franchise agreement between the City of Indio and Burtech Waste and Recycling Services, LLC, for solid waste collection services. And this will be handled by our Director of Public Works, Mr. Tim Watson.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'd like to invite our environmental specialist, Sarah Toyota, to come in and lead us in this short presentation. We have our team from Burtech and other consultants who helped us with this. So with your permission, I'd like to invite Sarah here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. These items come to you largely in part of the efforts that the city has needed to make to comply with SB 1383, which are new regulations to keep food waste and other organics out of the landfill. I'm going to explain a little bit about the background for 1383, and then I'm going to ask some of our consultants to talk just very briefly about their roles, because they brought a measure of confidence to these items because SB 1383 and its rollout is very new and it's mostly uncharted. Okay. Yes. Okay. SB 1383. It was created to keep organics and food waste out of the landfills because CalRecycle realized that at least around 2/3 of what's going to the landfills is organics. And those are things that we can use for compost and other things, and they don't need to go to landfills to begin with. And they also wrote in regulations for keeping some of the edible food that's going to landfills and rerouting that to people who actually need it. So that was another important aspect of it. But it's also, and in its core, it was made to reduce the effects of climate change. And as we know here locally, those effects include more extreme heat days, more frequent droughts, and longer durations of droughts. So there are good reasons why 1383 was created. But it's also important to note that it is a vast and prescriptive regulation. These are the 6 basic titles of what jurisdictions are now responsible to do. But behind each of these are pages of regulations and reporting requirements. And as we started going through the nuts and bolts of each one of these, it really became apparent that these aren't just going to affect the city and how we do things, but it's really going to also substantially affect the community. And it became very clear that we really needed to make sure that we had good outreach, especially in our commercial facilities, to know what's coming. 1383 was built off of an earlier organics diversion legislation 1826. And from that legislation, we had started working with Dmv Visions to help do outreach. And so we expanded that contract to basically underline everything else that we were doing to comply, to make sure that our commercial facilities knew what was coming. And I'd like to ask Don Wu with Dmv Visions to come up and talk a little bit about what he's done.
Good evening, everyone. I guess mentioned, my name is Don Wu. I am the owner of Dmv Visions. I've been your recycling consultant for the last couple of years. I was asked to give a little information about my background, what my company is, and what I'm doing for the city. So my background, I graduated with a degree in natural resource interpretation, which basically means I studied to be a park ranger, how to get information to the public in an easy way for them to understand. And that's basically what I specialize in. Dmv Visions is an environmental program development company, which basically means I assist municipalities to inform their businesses, residents about conservation issues. I started my business in 1999 to assist cities and municipalities in San Bernardino County about stormwater pollution prevention. And since then, I've been hired by numerous entities in Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside County to do similar projects. As I mentioned, I started out being hired to educate people about stormwater pollution prevention. Since then, I've been educating others on proper household hazardous waste disposal, water conservation, solid waste issues, including backyard composting, construction demolition debris recycling, general recycling, and now the hot topic of the day, organics recycling. Just some more background, in 2013, I was hired by the city of Palm Desert to assist them with the education of their commercial businesses and let them know about proper commercial recycling. My duties entail visiting businesses, letting them know about recycling mandates, evaluating their recycling practices, and then also assist them to reduce some contamination of their recycling bins. I also help businesses optimize their trash service to help increase the recycling and also help them reduce their costs. And Palm Desert also provides interior recycling bins to help the businesses sort stuff out before they go out. And so I offer them to the businesses also. I mentioned my work with Palm Desert because in 2020, Sarah informed me that I was contracted by the city to help you all do the similar efforts. Right about then, I did the same thing. I went to businesses, went through and told them about the mandates of the state, helped them optimize their trash service, getting them compliant, and just helping them in the efforts. And like Palm Desert, I also went out and let them know that the city offers free internal recycling bins, enter orders, deliver them to them. And if the year 2020 seems familiar, that's because that's when COVID hit. So I worked for a couple of months and then I did not work for a couple of months because of that. So I was out for about 6 months, but once I was back in the city, I went back to work. And about that time, we were not only talking about commercial recycling, but also the organics recycling. So I expanded my role, not only talking to the people with recycling, but also to those who had food in their businesses. So I had to go talk to them and tell them about the laws that are coming about and what's going to be expected of them. The good thing about these laws is that not everyone has to have organic recycling. For example, if you have an automobile repair shop, you don't have any organics, you don't need to have organic recycling. So I also went out and talked to people about the new laws saying, don't worry about it. You can be exempt from this. We'll fill out the waiver forms for you and we'll be fine. And so recently, recently my duties are just to go out to the businesses, tell them about food recycling and all the things I've been doing before. Any questions? Great.
For the franchise agreement, we really wanted to stick closely to just adding in the 1383 requirements, but it was an older agreement. There was a lot of outdated language. So we end up doing an amendment or completely restating it to incorporate all of that. And the rate adjustment wasn't routine. And so we hired MSW consultants because they brought experience with rates and franchise agreements with a multitude of cities. And MSW only works with municipalities and not necessarily on the hauler side of the table. So we wanted them to bring ultimately some confidence in the rates that we were going to bring forward and in the agreement as well.
Thanks. Good evening, Council. Thank you, Sarah. My name is David Davis. I'm the president and founder of MSW Consultants. We're a solid waste consulting firm. We help cities set trash rates and negotiate trash contracts and comply with state regulations. We've served about 80 jurisdictions over the years, and we, like Sarah said, we only work for local jurisdictions. Tonight, I want to keep three things in the back of our mind as I present the agreement that's before you tonight. And those are the solid waste program goals of the city. So when your constituents are asking you, hey, what's going on with this solid waste contract? You can say, hey, we're just trying to accomplish three things. We just want to get safe, reliable service at a reasonable cost. We want to comply with the state's recycling laws, and we want to minimize the administrative burden on city staff. If we can do those three things, everything else is good to go. So if we keep those in the back of our mind, I'll come back to those ideas. So tonight, if I can get my PowerPoint up here, and I'm going to go space bar. Got it. So I want to real quick do some industry trends, which I'm sure you've probably heard about. And then when we talk about an agreement, we can kind of boil things down into three areas: the services, the key terms, and the customer rates. So on the industry trends, I think you're pretty familiar with SB 1383. It's the most significant change in solid waste regulations in 30 years. And it's the main thing that it's doing is it's requiring cities to require their waste generators to recycle their organics. And if the city doesn't enforce that, then the state will enforce it upon the cities. So part of SB 1383 is a system eventually where people are going to be fined if they don't recycle. And if cities don't implement all these requirements of SB 1383, they're going to be fined by the state. So this is a very important thing that local jurisdictions are dealing with. And it's driving all kinds of costs because it's requiring new collection containers and routes and facilities. And it's driving up the capital spending, and rates for solid waste services are increasing up and down the state. In addition to that, we're still experiencing the impact of the China ban on recyclables. There's a driver shortage. Hauling companies are having a hard time hiring drivers. So as a result, the wages are going up. There's also supply shortages. A 3-yard bin a year ago was $500. Now it's $900, things like that. So we're in this kind of perfect storm of increasing costs and activity in the solid waste sector. So the agreement, as far as the services, you're going to continue to get the 3-cart residential collection system. Pretty important is that the contractor is now going to be required to collect food scraps from residential customers. And this is a real big driver of the cost because those food scraps, they're going to be put in separate bags and they have to be processed separately. So that's going to create a lot of labor and capital costs for the contractor. You're going to continue to get the commercial and multifamily bin service, the recycling service and organic service, permanent and temporary roll-off. Those are all going to be the same. So your reliable, consistent service is going to stay the same. In addition, there's a lot of services in the new agreement that are specifically designed to comply with SB 1383. So there's enhanced education and outreach. There's contamination monitoring. So as we divert new materials and you get people that didn't recycle before, now you're forcing them to recycle, there's going to be a lot of contamination. So there's a lot of focus on contamination monitoring. The contractor is required to do technical recycling assistance. So if you're a manufacturing plant, you've got some specific needs, they'll send people out there and they'll design a program just for your business. The law requires every year a compliance review of every customer, and it can be a desktop review, but every customer has to get reviewed every year. There's a waiver program, and there's also a requirement for the procurement of organic content products like mulch. So in your contract, there's a bulky item collection where people get unlimited bulky item collection events, but up to four items per collection. Free service to city facilities. There's 3 community cleanup events every year. There's an annual curbside cleanup in each council district every year. There's a universal drop-off. If you go to the Coachella Valley MRF, you can drop off universal waste, which is basically hazardous waste that should not go in the landfill, but it's not as nasty as some of the hazardous waste. So it's like fluorescent bulbs and paint, things like that. There's also a Sharps program, and they will also clean up illegally dumped items on the right of way. There's a semi-annual document shred event. There's medical waste, a mailback program. They pick up appliance with Freon. And then, so those are the services. And as far as the key terms, the term is going to be for 14 years. So the previous term was expiring in 2026. So as a result, the solid waste industry is very capital intensive. So sometimes people say, well, why do we have these long terms? It's because the trucks cost $300,000 or $400,000 and they have to last 10 years. So they also have these facilities that they have to construct and build to process this organic waste. So as a result, you need that long term in order for the contractor to reasonably amortize their capital costs. In addition to the term to 2026, there's the city has the sole option. So at the time in 2036, if the city's getting a good deal and it wants to extend the contract, it has the right to do that, or it can decide not to. And it's the city's sole option. There's also a rate adjustment method so that every year the rates go up based on an economic index, the PPI, and that's subject to a 5% cap. So if the PPI might go over 5%, which I think we might see that, it gets capped at 5%, which that's a pretty good deal for the city. Also, their actual disposal cost gets passed through. These came out a little bit small, but basically all these costs, we didn't want to have these hit the ratepayers all at once. So on the residential side, we're spreading out the pain over the first 3 years. So you can see that the rate that you have now for most people, this is probably 95% of your people have this rate, and it's on their tax roll. It's now $19.42 a month. And then that's going to go up this July to $20.87, and then to $22.43 and $23.97 over the next 3 years. And that's in addition to that, there's also going to be the PPI on top of that. And then here's the commercial rates. The commercial rates aren't going up as much, but they are going up about 7% for most of the customers. And then also the recycle is going up quite a bit because we're, you can see recycling is a lot less expensive than trash collection. But even then, at $55 for a 3-yard bin once a month, it doesn't really cover the cost of service. That price is set that low to give people an incentive to have that recycling service. So in closing, what this agreement does is it accomplishes your program goals, right? It delegates to Burtec all those services that are required to meet those state mandates. So those would have to be done either by staff or by Vertex. So we put those into the agreement. So your staff's not going to have to do the contamination monitoring, the compliance reviews, the waiver program, the enforcement, all these things that are required by SB 1383, putting that in the contract, putting that responsibility on Vertex. So you're going to be able to have that safe, reliable service at a reasonable cost, and you're going to meet your state recycling laws, and you're going to minimize your administrative burden on city staff. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does that? Oh no, yeah, we don't have any questions. If we have questions, we'll bring you back up. But thank you for your presentation.
This was not our normal rate increase, and so we wanted to put in extraordinary effort into the Prop 218 notice. That's part of what we have to do, required by law, in order to raise these rates. And normally we send out a black and white page that has a lot of legal language and the information that you need, and very little of it, or a very small portion of it, is translated into Spanish. So for this one, we work with CV Strategies and with Vertec to create something informational, something easy to read, something that would explain why these rates are increasing the way they are. And we also had it completely put into Spanish as well. So it was two-sided Spanish and English notice. Vertec helped us with the mailing, and they also, throughout this process, outreach, working on the agreement, they weren't idle. They did a lot of work with us, and they sent us their projections, their assumptions, their costs, so we could look over them and look through them and look at the rates and make sure that they were reasonable. So I wanted to ask them to come up and also talk a little bit very quickly about what they do as well.
Bring this down just a tad. Good evening, Mayor, distinguished Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, city manager, staff. On behalf of Vertec family, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today. In the interest of all of the information that was covered by our wonderful partners throughout this process, I'll go ahead and move along some of those slides. And I'm here accompanied by our Vice President, Frank Orlett, and Mike Vito sends his hellos as we're all kind of sharing the wealth of being at these council meetings in the Valley. So without further ado, my name is Clara Vera, and I am your municipal marketing manager. And again, it is an absolute pleasure to be here with the city of Indio. So I'll go through these pretty quick. A lot of this stuff was covered by our previous partners. And again, in the interest of time, we'll make sure that we provide the necessary information and answer any questions that may arise. So we'll cover Vertec Waste and Recycling and our commitment to the Indio community. A summary, I'll brief through the summary of residential and commercial programs, SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutants, and Vertec's will take care of it approach to SB 1383 items, a brief overview of our contract enhancements, and a snapshot of our education and outreach for you. So our commitment to Indio's environmental excellence, as Sarah and everybody else in the city and the staff works with us, our strengths are to offer customized services, as Dave has mentioned, that are tailored to meet every business profile, such as BuzzBox, who's doing a wonderful items in the city of Indio and throughout the nation in providing sustainable packaging and really helping the state meet those diversion goals. So I'm excited to reach out to the partners over there and learn more about all the things that they're doing. Our goal is to not only provide waste and recycling services, we want to encourage every community member to be environmental stewards of the community where we live, work, and play. For us here, it's Indio. And our opportunities, we understand our community is being faced with one of the most aggressive state diversion mandates of its kind in the last 30 years. And we want you to know that we are dedicated to meeting each milestone and being your partner in this program together. I'll slide through this. As Dave mentioned, we provide an ensuite of items that a lot of our Indio residents take advantage of. I'll skim through this one as well. Senate bill, as Sarah mentioned, there is an ensuite of record keeping and reporting and program implementations that are all part of SB 1383. And at any time you guys want to continue to talk a little bit more trash and death, we are always here to talk about that with you. And although the state has placed the ultimate responsibility of SB 1383 compliance on the city of Indio, Vertec will undertake much of that work, as we have with the rest of the legislations that the state of California has progressively pushed through and mandated the cities to be responsible for. As Sarah mentioned, the synopsis of what those items are to provide the collection services. As you have may seen some of your neighbors, we are starting to put in some of those really pretty blue containers. And the goal of really that standardization for the state is really to say, you're going to go visit your friends in Arcadia. You're going to go to Sacramento for an event. The goal of that is to be recognizable, right? You go to your family's house and you see the blue container. What do you say? It's recyclable, right? So versus in the latter part of that, we would go and we would see white, we would see green, we would see all kinds of colors. Well, the goal by 2036 is to really standardize those colors. So the new blue is your recycling, the gray will ultimately be your trash, and the green will be your organics. And rest assured that, as Sarah mentioned in that franchise agreement, and Dave, we are doing a lot of infrastructure, capital investments, improvements, enhancements to our facilities, to every facet of our organization to be able to help the city and the residents not only comply with these mandates, but also be active stewards of those programs. Go ahead and reach out, move past those items. One of the things that Sarah and I wanted to highlight is all of the progressive movement that has been happening over the last year and over the next 6 months, definitely. And the 2 years allows for education and outreach. And that's really going to be our focus to ensure that when we receive those programs, that we know what we're doing and that we're doing the right items. So as Sarah mentioned, we had a beautiful SB 1383 introduction in our notice that really provided a lot of highlighted items for SB 1383. We are currently monitoring, as Dawn had mentioned, a lot of those legislations. We're doing outreach. This law also requires the jurisdictions and property managers and owners to not only provide education and outreach in English, but it also requires each jurisdiction based on the population to provide it in that significant language. For us, it's Spanish. So all of our pieces moving forward have been in English y también en español, so everybody can acclimate to those programs and really embrace those resources. As Dawn mentioned and Sarah mentioned, we've been identifying our edible food partners, which is our tier 1, tier 2 partners in the city of Indio, providing businesses with education. The waiver program is really a program we want to make sure that we maximize. We understand that not every business is a food producing business, and the state does allow for waivers to be presented. You can see here a snapshot of what that looks like, as well as also monitoring new construction business that's coming into the city of Indio. We've enhanced our C&D programs, Burtech Builders Direct program, to make sure that those constructions are doing 65% diversion as required by the law. So briefly, I'll share with you some of our enhanced materials that I hope that you are enjoying and that you're seeing. They are in English and Spanish. Here's our new residential newsletter, our new commercial newsletter, which talks about all of the current laws and the current edible food recovery item. We also have some fact sheets. We've added some infographics. We've really streamlined our recycling notices. We've produced a how-to guide for all of our commercial businesses and additional resources that are free and available to our commercial businesses. You just got to give us a call and let us know that you would like for us to come out. And with that said, thank you, Indio, for being a strong supporter of outstanding environmental programs. It is our pleasure on behalf of the Burtech family to provide solid waste and recycling service. And when we say recycling now, we also include organics. And these are some snapshot pictures of some of the residents and city constituents that are taking advantage of some of those programs. We're happy to answer any questions, and thank you for providing those environmental programs to our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, there's certainly a lot of work will still have to be done to be compliant with SB 1383, but tonight we're asking you to consider the draft amendment and restated franchise agreement and proposed rates, which will ultimately be the foundation or the support that we'll need to move forward with the next steps. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is a public hearing item. So I want to open the public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have anyone online that'd like to make public comment on this item?
No, Mayor.
No, we do not have any present. We did have some submitted via email that all the council has received. So with that being said, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for the council for questions or comments of the consultants or Burtech or some of our staff.
This SB 1383 is just a tremendous undertaking on the part of everyone. It's enormous. It's an enormous effort. I think I certainly appreciate the effort, Sarah, of the city, of Burtech, the outreach, the ongoing outreach that's going to continue. And I guess one question I have of the city is how are we going to work with the restaurants and whatnot? How are we going to manage and enforce this? It's going to be a challenge, I know, but
it is going to be challenging, but our main goal right now is education. That's absolutely where we're focused right now. We're not necessarily focused on enforcement. CalRecycle did want to make sure that we had that capability, so we had to bring forward an ordinance. But right now, the focus is absolutely education. If it means keeping consultants, as I think that we'll work further with Burtech and Don to hone what we can do next. We've been kind of focused on getting to this point, but we really haven't talked about enforcement. We can do it. We will do it. CalRecycle will make us do it, but we really can't focus on that until we've done more education. We're just not ready.
Okay. Go ahead. No, I just, Councilmember Amit has her hand raised. Councilmember, you have a question or comments?
First of all, I have a comment for IT. Some of the presentation wasn't visible because there was a message from Adobe Acrobat to update or something. So I want to make sure that they correct that. But my question is more for City Attorney. This is a state of California mandate, but yet we're required to go out to Prop 218 protest processes. So how does that really jive?
Well, as some things in Sacramento happen, things don't jive. And so it is mandated to undertake this program. However, with the rates are governed by Prop 218. And so we need to follow that process. I don't believe in the consultants in the room, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no reimbursement for this mandate. I suspect that there is not, and that they're shaking their heads no, and that it's something that gets absorbed by the haulers, but also by the ratepayers. And so that is why this whole item was a huge effort by the entire team, not only to adopt and move forward the ordinance, but also the rates as well.
So for the public benefit that, we have received some oppositions to this item, but their real vehicle for opposing the item is through the protest, which the only thing they can protest is the actual rate, but the mandate will stay in place. And the rate is what the actual costs are. So I'm not sure that their protests will actually have any impact. What can residents that oppose this actually do besides contact their legislator?
I think that, and maybe Sarah can answer this better, but moving forward, I mean, I do see that, I believe that there is a trend towards not zero waste, but close to zero waste. And this is one of the items that's moving forward in that way. And I think that the Indio team is doing its best efforts to educate, and so that this will become more of a way of life in the future. As for example, no smoking. I mean, it's very rare that you go anywhere and people are smoking. So, I mean, this is something similar in that vein. And Sarah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, especially with the commercial facilities, the charges are per service, and the more service you have, the higher the charges. So part of what we plan to roll out in the future are more, you can call them zero waste, but waste reduction ideas and techniques. We will be getting a grant for 1383 implementation, and we hope to use that funding, about $121,000, basically to roll out programs like that to reduce waste with the commercial facilities that can help actually lower costs. It's a little more difficult with the residents because they're bundled, but being bundled, it also helps them to remain low. It's one of the things that why we did that ultimately was if they're bundled, we could keep them as low as possible.
Well, unlike smoking laws, this one carries an increased rate with it. So the word to the residents is that if you're unhappy with this mandate, that you need to contact your legislators, because the rates are based on actual costs. They're not increased taxes, they're not increased fees. It's just the cost recovery. So if residents protest this increase, then they need to contact their state legislators.
That would be correct.
Councilmember Miller, you have a comment?
it's just another mandate. And I understand what they're trying to do, but I was raised on farms, so we just threw it out to the hogs and that. So we didn't worry about it. But what's going to happen is most people are just going to grind it up into their garbage disposal. We've always been taught to scrape it off and put it in the trash, but I really doubt that people are going to sit there and separate this and do it. I mean, people will to an extent, but I just think people are going to put it back where it is. And it's just charging a higher fee. I understand what they're trying to accomplish. Thanks to Sarah and everybody for their work. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to actually enforce and to be able to see, but it's going to cost more. And I'm just surprised it didn't actually cost more money, to be honest with you. I think Burtech has taken a blunt of the burden on this, along with the county and the city of Indio. I think the residents are getting off kind of cheap at $1 something, my personal opinion, because this is not going to be an easy undertaking, let alone just the bends and everything else that come with it, and the equipment and the separation and that's all labor and hand and everything else. So we'll get through it. We always do, but it's just another opportunity that our residents probably didn't need to pay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a question on the process. You mentioned some bags that were going to be used for the organic waste. How does that work with the bins and the bags?
That's a good question. Ultimately, SB 1383 allows collection of organic waste in plastic bags. So you can take your organic waste, your food waste, put it in a plastic bag and throw it in your green container. It's something we're going to have to allow here in Indio because we only have composting facilities here. And with composting, you have to have a very specific ratio of your average yard waste to food waste. So they have to be separated. So the only other option was taking a whole nother truck around the city, which would have raised. We couldn't justify it. So what will happen is they have new equipment that can take out the plastic bags from the organic waste. So that's part of the equipment and part of the costs that went into the rates to make sure that Burtech will be able to get that equipment, be able to pull those plastic bags out, and then process it, clean compost.
Okay, thank you.
So the plastic bags that we have banned are now going to be required to be used for this food waste?
Not required.
Recommended.
Well, what else are we going to use? I mean, we're not going to spend $1 on a Ziploc.
I have a hard time with this because I have a hard time allowing this as well. We don't have a whole lot of other options. So yes, the answer is yes.
Could people use the compostable plastic bags?
They can, but most of them aren't compostable and they'll be taking it out with the just plain plastic bags. They cost a little more. So until we're sure that we have something that really works, I can't recommend them because they're more expensive.
Yeah, gotcha.
So do we raise the ban on plastic bags?
No, we weren't thinking of doing that.
We have possibilities.
Well, I don't know where the plastic bags are going to come from because personally, I'm not going to pay $1 a Ziploc bag to do this. And we need to have solutions for our residents.
Burtech would like to use the clear plastic bags, like when you buy organics at a grocery store, lemons or so, they have a plastic bag that's just for
transparent.
Right.
But who's going to provide them? I mean, I don't have a roll of them at home. Who's going to provide them?
The grocery store. They don't get.
So yeah.
So I'm going to go to the grocery store and say, I need 10 bags for this week's organic waste.
Well, if you're buying groceries, you're probably using the bags anyway.
No, I don't. But is that what I'm going to do?
We were assuming that you would get those frequently enough going to the grocery store and purchasing produce that that residents will not need to supplement that.
Well, because of the plastic ban that we have in the city of Indio, most people have not gotten those produce bags. They just grab their lettuce or their vegetables and put it in their recyclable bags.
Well, I
figure it out.
I think
with the education.
Yeah, we're gonna figure it out. I think some of us are still able to get that, and we're not asking anyone to go buy it, but Mr. Orlett, if you have any comments.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, Frank Orlett, Vice President for Burtech. So Councilmember Ramos, you can use paper bags, you can wrap it. It doesn't have to be plastic. So we just need to be able to separate it, have the ability to separate it at the facility for the composting process. It doesn't have to be plastic bags.
Perfect.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah, and our consultants and everyone who put the time into this. This is something that's state mandated. So we're not the only ones that are going through this. And, ultimately, if we don't follow it, we get fined. And so this is something that we have to deal with and maneuver and adapt to the situation. But before I move forward and ask and actually close to the public hearing, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the city attorney to for correction.
Yes, I have one correction on resolution 10296, and that's in section 1, paragraph B. The very last sentence says not to exceed 5%, and the disposal component of the charges may annually increase. It currently says by 0 to 8%, and that should be amended to annually increase up to 8%. So it's just a slight change, but wanted to make that change. And so when you make your motion, if you can make the motion and adopt the item as amended by the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. If we have no further questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve resolution number 10302. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one.
I'll make the adopt the resolution number 10296, increasing solid waste charges for residential and commercial customers for fiscal year 2022, 2023 through 2026, 27. Adopt resolution number 10297, levying annual waste charges for fiscal year 2022, 23, and ordering the collection and residential charges on a county tax roll, and approve the draft amended and restated franchise agreement between the City of Indio and Burtech Waste and Recycling Service LLC for solid waste collection services as amended by the city attorney.
And I'll second that.
Got a motion by Councilmember Miller and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz. Could I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes?
Aye.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz?
Aye.
And Mayor Furman?
Aye. Motion passes with the corrections. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is 9.3, city resolution numbers 10302, 10303, 10304, and 10305, and Indio Housing Authority Resolution 2022-13, adopting fiscal year 2022-23, the operating and capital budget, the capital improvement program and appropriations limit, the citywide classification and compensation plan, and operating budget for Indio Housing Authority. And this will be handled by Assistant City Manager and Director of Finance, Mr. Rob Rockwell.
Thank you. That's who I am. Tonight's staff is asking you to adopt the budgets for the Housing Authority in the City of Indio. Yay, I know you're excited as I am. This is an annual event for us.
What happened to our audience? Everybody left?
What?
Oh, man.
Oh,
well, that's it.
That hurts. That hurts.
Well, we love you, Rob.
All right. So the budget being proposed to you tonight is consistent with the budget hearings that we had in May. And if you remember, we talked a lot about CIP projects, right? So they're all in here above the line, the ones that were up to the spending limit we had. So this slide is a global perspective of the budget that staff is asking you to adopt. And we've broken it up here into the general fund, other city funds, which include what we call fiduciary funds. That includes the Housing Authority, the successor agency, various infrastructure assessment districts, and the Indio Public Finance Authority. And we separate those because those really aren't necessarily tied to city operations. And then we have the rest of the funds categorized as the operating and capital funds. Overall appropriations or expenditures, you might want to call them, total $331 million. And that is supported by the revenue as categorized here, $155 million for operating capital funds, $29 million for the other city funds, and $98 $0.6 million in the general fund. And to cover the difference between revenue and expenditures, there is fund balance. So for other operating funds, they'll be utilizing $27.7 million in fund balance. Fund balance are resources that have been collected in a prior period. There'll be some increases in fund balance for the other city funds, those fiduciary funds. And then we'll be using about $39 million in fund balance in the general fund to cover the operational needs in the general fund. The majority of that is Measure X money, and I'll be going into that in a little bit more detail in a few slides from now. So the budget, also, I wanted to make a mental note about transfers. We collect revenue in the general fund through taxes. We transfer that money out to a capital project fund where it receives that money, and then the capital project fund pays a contractor to build something for us. So we have multiple ins and outs. So we categorize here transfers as those ins and outs. And when that's just to give you a reference of really what the internal processes are compared to what truly the external costs are. So here, while the budget is $331 million, once you take out those transfers, you really have a $234 expenditure, $200 million expenditure plan. If $331 million, if you want to say that was pounds, I don't mean English pounds, I mean like weightlifting pounds. This budget is about 118 pounds more than the last year's budget. And that's pretty significant. It's $118 million higher than last year's budget. That is significantly due to the capital improvement projects that you have asked staff to embrace. So upon adopting this budget, you're basically asking staff this next year to bench press 118 pounds more than you asked them to do this year. And fortunately, a lot of that, I don't know where Tim Wassel went, but a lot of that is going to be up to Tim Wassel to bench press that as part of the CIP plan. He just missed it. I hope you're working out. Okay, so now we've taken out, this slide represents, we're taking out the fiduciary funds and we're looking more just at the city operating and capital budget. And this is this graph illustrates how those funds are going to be spent. So you see here, this graph shows you that 71% of the total city's operational budget is going to be spent on purchase services. Purchase services include landscape services, utilities, includes the fire contract, fire and ambulance service contract. And that large increase that you're seeing there is, again, because we book construction as construction services, because we're going to be paying somebody to build something or to fix something in most cases. So that's why you see such a significant increase in purchase services. You don't see such a large increase in salary and benefits, a slight increase as you might suspect, not a big change in capital assets, and then a modest increase in other operating costs. And other operating costs would include materials and supplies. Might be office supplies, might be paper, might be ink, or might be motor oil for the cars. This slide represents the funding sources that are going to cover that $220 million in expenditures, and this is broken down by funding source. So in this slide, you'll notice that 45% of the planned expenditures is being covered by taxes, 34% by other governmental agencies. With CIP projects comes Coachella Valley Associated Government funding, for example, and other grant funds. Fees and charges, license and permits, other revenues, fines and forfeitures, uses of money. The significant, there's an increase in taxes, and that's not new tax rates. A lot of those taxes are just driven by the economy, right? Transient occupancy taxes, sales taxes. It's a sign of a positive growing environment. I mentioned the large increase in the intergovernmental because of the capital projects. You also see a pretty large increase compared to prior years in the fees and charge category. That's tied to the fact that the council did adopt new fees and charges last year, as well as we also adopted in the license and permit section, short-term rental permits. So that's why we have some increases in that area. Okay, so now we're kind of zoning in a little bit more on the general fund. That's the piece that is most available to you to spend at your discretion, city council's discretion. And so the general fund here, this graph illustrates how the general fund, $137 million in general fund dollars is being utilized. 31% of that is to purchase services. 26% is on salaries and benefits. 40% is on assets, debt, and lease. Again, that's because of such a large portion, about $40 million that's being transferred out of the general fund where we capture our Measure X dollars, or that use tax revenue is being transferred to a CIP, a capital project fund, where the construction costs are going to be collected. I would say that you'll see a slight decrease in purchase services in the general fund, and that's somewhat tied to, we have a new city manager who's come in who wanted to look under all the rocks and has cleaned up all the areas, and all the one-time funding is all gone. So that's why that's slightly gone. I will comment on the fact that you do see a slight decrease here in salary and benefits, and that's tied to kind of a change in practice. Prior to this year, we would recognize the expected salary savings, but we wouldn't budgetize it, if you will. Now we are recognizing that expected savings up front, and so that's why you see a reduction in salary and benefits costs. We're expecting that attrition, that savings due to positions not being filled while they're being recruited for, and also some tough to recruit positions. Looking at the revenue that's supporting the general fund expenditures. This pie graph shows you that we are expecting that $137 million in expenditures. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a graph explaining who is spending your $137 million. We're going to get to revenue in a second. So, for example, 28% of all the expenditures are being spent through the police department. Of course, a lot of that is salaries. 13% is being spent on fire and ambulance. Combined police and fire is about 41% of all general fund expenditures. Typically at 65%. It's reduced statistically this year because we have such a large Measure X CIP transfer that's coming out of the general fund. And you see the other categories: 5% public works, 8% administration. Of course, administration covers the city attorneys, city clerk, finance, HR, those departments. And you see how 9% is non-departmental and debt, 3% community development, 1% economic development. So that's where the money's being flowed through. Okay, revenue. So $98.6 million in general fund revenue is expected to come in next year. 74% of that revenue is tax revenue. You'll see that there's a looking kind of from the clockwise, a small portion of intergovernmental grants. Most of the intergovernmental revenues recognized outside of the general fund. You'll see 6% is license, permits, and franchises. Less than 1% fines and forfeitures. About 1% is use of money and property. That includes the interest we get from investing our money, and it also includes rental revenue from renting spaces. Fees and charges, about $10.9 million. 50% of the fees and charges is just money that we spend in support of the April concert series, and we get directly reimbursed for that. But that shows up as service expense because we have to pay a lot of other agencies to come in and provide the services that it's more than we can handle by the city of Indio by itself. We do have 4% transfers in. That's your public safety CFD money that's coming in. That's to support public safety services. And you have a small portion, 3% is other revenue. That really is the ticket sharing revenue we get on the tickets sold for the April concert series. Just a little bit more detail on taxes, since it does represent 74% of the general fund revenue. Here you can see that those taxes are broken down by category. And what I did here is I gave you in green the current year budget. I gave you a little bit of history because the budget is an estimate. Now, that's not money in the bank. That's just our best guess. The actuals are what we received last year. And I gave you the current budget. And then I gave you a year-over-year percent and a year-over-year dollar change. So it kind of gives you a sense of what is staff expecting for next year. So staff has built in the expectation about 5.5% increase in property taxes, 4% in sales taxes, a little better growth in Measure X sales taxes, 2.3% in utility users taxes, 3.2% in transient occupancy taxes, a small increase in business license taxes, franchise fees. In license and permits, you have a bigger increase because we have the short-term rental permits included in that category, and then a modest increase in fees and charges. Again, as I expressed earlier, new fees and charge schedule that you adopted. Also, I want to mention the license and permits. We're still expecting a pretty robust number of building permits to come in next year, which is also reflected in that 65%. Overall, about a 6% increase in tax revenue next year. Now that's a pretty optimistic perspective. You know, we made the mistake of assuming things were going to slow down during the pandemic. They did not slow down. There was a very robust economy. We still see a lot of tax money. There's a lot of negative perspectives. You know, there's inflation, there's the funds, there's the war in Ukraine. But if things hold well and things are looking good right now for the city of Indio, we think we'll hit these numbers. All right, a little bit more detail on Measure X, one of your favorite revenue sources, right? So we are incorporating into the budget the assumption of $15.6 million in Measure X sales tax revenue. We are also utilizing $31.7 million in prior savings, if you will, of Measure X resources, and we're transferring most of that money into the CIP plan. And then this gives you a brief description of what categories that revenue is being spent on. So if you follow along, $7.2 million for street projects, $2.7 million in street maintenance, $8.4 million in freeway interchange projects, $1.17 million for a debt service on bonds, $1.2 million on sidewalks. That includes some asphalt and crack, and there's some other things that fall into it. It's not just sidewalks. In fact, these are the categories that are represented in your budget book under the CIP program. So you can go to the CIP program tab and look at the CIP summary, and it has all the details on all these categories, so that you can see specifically where these monies are being spent, what roads, in what category. Moving along. Small $250,000 on traffic signals, $12.8 million in parks. So if you want to know where that park money is, I suggest you go to the CIP program tab, gives you all the gory details. $8.5 million on buildings. That includes a $5 million contingency that's being built in to cover some of the public safety, campus, and city hall projects, which I'm looking forward to talking to you about next. And a small amount of CIP money, Measure X money that's being set aside for aid to outside agencies. I believe we have that earmarked $50,000 for Martha's Village and $50,000 for Fine Food Bank, if I recall correctly. Okay, the staffing levels. Incorporated in the budget is 289 full-time positions, 7 elected, 35 appointed commissioners, 9 part-timers. Some of the changes from the budget that was adopted last year. There's 1 new part-time community aid program in the budget, 1 new full-time police record specialist, 3 new full-time facility maintenance workers, and authority to underfill a few of the hard-to-recruit police officer positions with community service officers. So that allows the staff to hire individuals that can do semi-police work that will lower the load on our police officers while we really try to recruit the officers themselves. Also, I want to mention that included in the first time in the budget is the class and compensation resolution. The city council or the city is required to adopt a resolution annually that lists all the job classifications and their pay levels. That's something that was required by government code. CalPERS relies on that information as part of disclosure and retirement calculations. So we're basically combining it this year with the budget. And that is attachment D. Now, we've always had in the budget what we refer to as Schedule 16, which lists all the funded positions. But what's different about this is it lists the pay levels. All right. And of course, it being the first time, the attachment D that we included in the budget and disclosed to you was not complete. It did not include some of the cost of living allowances that you previously approved for the non-sworn as well as the sworn staff. So we had to create a revised attachment D that has been provided to city clerk. Hopefully it's been provided to you reading the notes. City clerk can give you more information on that. Just to let you know that we have submitted to you a revised exhibit. So the resolution didn't change, but the exhibit to attachment D did change. And that was just, again, to include the COLAs that you all already authorized for staff. The majority of staff got 2%. Police officers generally got 3.5% COLA. I also want to remind you that staff is asking you tonight, as the housing authority, to adopt a housing authority budget. This is a quick perspective on what that budget looks like and how it compares to last year. Last year, you see revenue quite a bit higher than this year because we got a larger amount of a payment through the ROPS. Redevelopment money coming into the housing authority to pay off a prior loan, right? There's about a $400,000 outstanding balance on that, which we expect to get a good portion of that this year, and that's that revenue is really that loan payoff. Not a whole lot going on in the housing authority next year. That could change, of course, because anytime a budget amendment can be adopted, but at this point, that is the expectation. Okay, so this is the recommended slide. So that you know that this is the point where I'm getting close to the end of my presentation. So of course, the recommended motion will need to be adopted following a public hearing. I also want to mention that this is being adopted in a public hearing because of the CIP. Because of the use of development impact fees. And the use of development impact fees is that details attached in attachment B, which is a resolution adopting a CIP. I also want to mention that as required by the Brown Act and as part of the City Council approval of the new class and comp plan, the city attorney will orally report monthly salary ranges for local agency executives. That would be the department heads, the assistant city manager, the deputy city manager, and she'll need to read those before the council can take action on this item. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Rockwell. This public hearing item. Yes. So we will open a public hearing and ask our clerk, do we have anyone comment?
No, Mayor.
We have no one online. I have none present. So I'll close the public hearing and open it up for council questions, comments, budget.
Just want to, if I could, Mayor, just want to thank Rob and his staff and everyone that put in all the effort, our department heads and everyone else that put this together. It's quite an undertaking. And when you're talking that kind of funding, the detail work and everything went into it. And Rob's done an amazing job with his staff to highlight those and then also explain it to novices like myself on where all that money comes from. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from the council?
Oh, over here to your left.
Does Councilmember Mead, do you have any questions or comments for Rob?
Yes, I do. On the slide that indicated the fiscal year 2022-2023 general fund actual versus updated budget, the updated budget is 92 million and change. Why is that higher than the actual is my question.
So the actual is revenue that was received in fiscal year 21-22. I'm sorry, that actually, I understand why you're confused because that actual is actually 2021. And the updated budget means that when you adopted the 21-22 budget, we made mid-year changes. And if you recall, because of the pandemic, the budget was very conservative, but at mid-year, we looked at our revenues and we increased them about $9 million. So what that represents is that the adopted budget for 2021 was about $9 million less than the $92.5 million. And I apologize, that orange category is the prior year actuals 2021 actuals, right? So when you look at this, you can see how much our revenues have actually grown the last couple of years.
Okay, so the orange is the prior fiscal year, the green is the current fiscal year, and the recommended is increased by 6.6%.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rob. And then the other comment I have for city manager is he needs to take a look at the resolution for council compensation to make sure that it is included in the proposed budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember, for your comments. Councilmember Holmes?
Just thank you. And I've never seen anybody get so excited about presenting a budget. You're so animated. I love it. It gets us totally energized. I have to say, I read through this on Sunday, and what was really exciting is going through the pages of the capital improvement plans. I mean, that's exciting stuff. I mean, we've had this in the past, but this is like half an inch of things we're going to get done and the dollars that go with it. So thank you for that. It's wonderful. Thank you, staff, but especially thank you to Rob for pulling this together in the amount of detail that you have provided to us and in such a manner that all of us can wrap our arms around it and understand it. Thank you very, very much.
Right. And I'll second what our council member said. Thank you, Rob, for your hard work, not just in the presentation, because there's a lot of work that goes into that presentation. And also thank the community and thank you for trusting us with your tax dollars and seeing that we are really digging deep and cracking the nuts and bolts in this and making sure we're doing this right and serving our community. I mean, if you look at these capital improvement projects and these parks and infrastructure projects that we're doing, it's phenomenal work. And City Manager, thank you for spearheading a lot of this and really being innovative and getting these things done. We don't have can't in our vocabulary in Indio. We figure out how we get it done, and we're very progressive and moving forward. And with that being said, I'm sorry that some people left. However, they missed part of the best moment of the council meeting. We do have something we want to present to Rob and to show our appreciation for what you have been doing for the city for the years you've been here and for really getting us to this point. So we want to present you with a trophy from PJ's. Look at that.
Nice. And what does it say?
And so it says Rockwell, Chief Financial Wizard of City of Indio.
Robes now.
There you go. So go play the calculator.
Photo op. This is big, Rob.
Yeah.
I know this has been done before.
Thank you, Councilmember Holmes, for donating.
I see my peers laughing.
So heavy.
That's making Facebook.
I'm ready to read something.
Okay, yeah.
So as Rob alluded to, the Brown Act was amended to add a new provision that requires prior to the council taking action on any salary schedules or compensation paid to a local agency executive, that I provided an oral report of the summary of that salary schedule. And a local agency executive includes your deputy city managers, your assistant, department heads. And so I will go ahead and do that. So just bear with me. Assistant city manager, director of finance, monthly salary minimum $13,313.33, maximum $19,669.83. Assistant police chief, minimum monthly salary $11,463.17, maximum monthly salary $16,936.31. And this position is also entitled to either a 5% or 10% post certification pay. Chief building official, monthly salary minimum $10,363.63, maximum $15,311.80. Chief of police, monthly salary $13,313.33, maximum $19,669.83. This position is also entitled to a 5% or a 10% post pay as well. City clerk administrator, minimum monthly salary $11,463 to 17 cents to $16,936.31. City engineer, minimum monthly salary $10,363.63, maximum monthly salary $15,311.80. Deputy city manager, minimum monthly salary $12,049.40, maximum salary $17,802.44. Director of community development, minimum monthly salary $11,463.17, maximum monthly salary $16,936.31. Director of economic development, minimum monthly salary $11,463.17, maximum salary $16,936.31. Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, minimum monthly salary $11,463.17, maximum salary $16,936.31. Director of Information Technology, Minimum monthly salary, $11,463.17. Maximum monthly salary, $16,936.31. Director of Public Works, minimum monthly salary, $11,463.17. Maximum monthly salary, $16,936.31. General Manager, India Water Authority, minimum monthly salary, $11,463.17. Maximum salary, $16,936.31. And for the public, these are minimum and maximum ranges. And so that is the salary schedule that's submitted to the state. So thank you.
Great, thank you. After that reading, I would entertain a motion.
A motion to approve resolution number 10302, adopting the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating and capital budget for City of Indio. Resolution number 10303, adopting the capital improvement program for fiscal year 2022-2023. Resolution number 10304, determining and establishing the City of Indio's appropriations limit for fiscal year 2022-2023. Resolution number 10305, approving a citywide classification and compensation plan as amended. And Indio Housing Authority Resolution number 2022-13, adopting the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the Indio Housing Authority.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz and a second by Councilmember Holmes. Could I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes?
Aye.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz?
Aye.
And Mayor Furman?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. We'll move on to the next item, which is 9.4, resolution number 10301 of City Council of the City of Indio, resolution number 2022-13 of the Board of Directors of the Indio Public Financing Authority, each authorizing the issuance and sale of lease revenue bonds Series 2022A and Series 2022B, and this will be handled by our Assistant City Manager and Director of Finance,
Rob Rockwell.
There we go.
Wizard.
The wizard.
Jeez. Okay, all right. Back to business. So tonight, staff is asking the council and the Indio Finance Authority to approve the issuance of lease revenue bonds and related documents. The resolutions authorizes the sale and lease of two series of bonds, 2022A and a 2022B series, with an aggregate amount principal not to exceed $145 million and an underwriter's discount of 0.2%. Of course, this money that we're asking you to allow staff to issue bonds for will cover the cost of a new public safety campus, city hall and library, and it includes the refunding of a 2012 bond issuance. About 17 million of the total is to refinance some bonds. As the source of the repayment on the bonds, lease payment will be made from the City of Indio's general fund to the Indian Finance Authority, which will make the debt payment. Also, the resolution authorizes the staff to combine those two issuances into one issuance if it's to the City of Indio's benefit. Right now, it's been broken down. One issuance to cover the public safety campus, another issuance, the Bs, to cover the city hall and library. But again, if it's to our benefit and we can make it happen, it's better for us to have one issuance than two. And we're working on that as we speak.
Is the PowerPoint supposed to be changing? Oh, there it is.
Okay, now we're caught up. I'm all excited now. All right, so to make this happen for the Indio Finance Authority and the City of Indio, it's necessary for the council to adopt a lot of legal documents. Those documents include the 2008 indenture, which is basically the contract or bond agreement. There's a ground lease, a lease agreement, an assignment agreement, the bond purchase agreement, and a preliminary official statement for both series of bonds, for the A's and the B's, and also an escrow agreement that has to do with the refunding of the 2012 bonds. A little bit more on the projects. Of course, the public safety campus consists of 3 buildings. A public safety services building that will be 2 stories, about 22,500 square feet. We'll be replacing the fire station that's at 46990 Jackson Street. That will be replaced with a state-of-the-art 14,000 square foot new fire station. And there will be a new dispatch center that'll be about 7,500 square feet. And of course, that's a major change because our dispatchers are now working out of temporary modular buildings. So this will be a permanent home for them. The City Hall will potentially be 3 stories, 37,000 square feet. This will include a new council chambers and a new library that will be approximately 8,800 square feet. So the financing lease structure, this might sound a little technical, but this is how we do things in California these days. So there will be a lease bond financing invoice, involves the city leasing assets, property to the finance authority. The authority subleases those assets back to the city of Indio. The city would agree to make lease payments to the authority for that. The lease payments will be exactly equal to the debt service that the authority will be making to the bondholders. And then, of course, there's an agreement between the finance authority to pay the bank who pays the bondholders. So there's a lease back transfer of assets here between the city of Indio and the Indio Finance Authority. Again, this is very typical in the state of California. That's why they're called lease revenue bonds instead of what you might refer to as general obligation bonds. A little bit of the financing overview. The bonds will be, the debt, if you will be over a 30-year term. There'll be 2 payments a year, which is very typical for the debt payments that we make annually in May and November. The city of Indio will be required in the general fund to make annual appropriations to make the lease payment. And again, the finance authority will make in its budget the authority to make the debt payment on the bonds. Some of the differences between the 2000As and 2000Bs, again, the 2000As is really focused on the public safety campus. That borrowing will include what's called capitalized interest. So in that case, because there is no asset to lease between the city and the finance authority because it's not built yet, we have to borrow enough to make sure that the finance authority can make the debt payments. So it's a bridge period of time. We're borrowing so the finance authority has the money to make the bond payment until there's such an asset built that we can start this lease back payment process. The difference on the 2002B bonds is that in that case, we're going to be using existing city assets, which we'll be leasing to the Indio Finance Authority for a brief period of time, existing assets, which I'll go over in a minute. And then once the city hall and the new library are built, they will become the leased assets, and the assets that we're temporarily using will be freed up. This is the initial list of assets that's involved in this bond document or in the bonding agreement. Terralogo Fire Station, the Teen Center, the Police Department Building, Chamber of Commerce, Shadow Hills Fire Station, number 4, the existing City Hall, the Burger Building, Burr Street Park, Senior Center, North Jackson Park, India Sports Park, South Jackson Park, and Miles Avenue Park. Some of these assets are already collateral for 2012 bonds. We are going to be freeing those up so that they can be utilized in the new issuance. It's definitely better to have city assets to back your bonds than to have to pay a capitalized interest. If we had more city assets available, we would have utilized them, but we don't. Okay, this slide represents the estimated sources and uses. You can see here the par amount of the bonds, $62.5 million for the public safety campus, $68.6 for the city hall. There going to be some bond premium and some other sources of funds that will be available. And then you can see down there the uses of the bond proceeds. Most of those go to pay the project. There will be some refunding escrow deposits, some capitalized interest, as I mentioned, debt service reserve fund, and then some cost for issuance. Overall, it's estimated to be a $138 million process. Now, we're hoping to go to the market and do better than this. Of course, the Federal Reserve is kind of working against us on that a little bit, but we still hope to be able to get these numbers or better numbers for you when we go to the market. This slide represents the expected annual debt service payments for the Series A, the Series B, and the refunding bonds. And of course, when you refund bonds, you can't extend the term of that debt. So you'll notice that in 2038, the payments on the refunding portion end, because that was the original term of those bonds, that original 30-year term. So here we have an overall for the entire project, an estimated true interest cost of about 4.7%. The estimated annual net payments is $7.8 million. The new money portion, not including the refunding, the new money portion annual payment is about 7.1, almost $7.2 million. The refunding piece is about $1.36 million. Now, those are a little bit low because they include the first 3 years. The debt payments are a little bit lower than they are the other 37 years. So what I've done here under the Measure X, because we informally have committing our Measure X dollars. There's no formal commitment of Measure X, but we know that's the source of revenue that we're paying our bonds. So what I've done here for you is kind of giving you an illustration that on average, if we get $15.6 million in Measure X money per year, we already have an obligation of the 2017 judgment obligation bonds, which you know about. It's about $1.2 million. If you take out those first 3 years, the actual average of the payment is about $7.6 million on this debt. That's the new money debt. That leaves, assuming you still decide to carve out $4.5 million for road improvements, which you have done typically in the past of your Measure X resources, that leaves about $2.3 million for other purposes that you want to use Measure X money for. So the economy will fluctuate. Measure X might go down a little bit. Also, there's good likelihood that Measure X will go up, and the resources you have available above the bond obligations, you'll have more resources. That's the expectation. So we're not using every Measure X dollar. There's plenty of flexibility there is what I hope you get from that message. Okay. To talking a little bit more specifically about the 2012 bonds that we are refunding. Originally, the city issued $24.5 million in debt. The outstanding balance on those 2012 bonds is about $17.3 million. The final maturity is November of 2037. The bonds are not callable. Typically, when you issue bonds, you can't refund them for the first 10 years. So we can't call these bonds before November 1st. There's like a 3-month window that we can actually call them early, but otherwise we can't. So what I'm trying to say to you is that we have reached our first opportunity to refinance these bonds. We couldn't do it last year when the rates were better. It just wasn't allowed for the bond documents. So we're refunding the bond documents for savings and to free up the assets that I mentioned earlier so that we can use them for the new assets that we're looking forward to build. On average, the refunding, we expect to save about $1.36 million. That's the gross savings. The net present value savings is about $519,000 or about 3%. And the annual debt service should be reduced about $125,000 a year. So there's definitely some savings there. I want to mention that it takes a small army to accomplish this, and we have a good army that's working on your behalf here. Of course, the Bond Council and Disclosure Council from Stradling. I know we have Brian here with us today. Municipal advisors from Fieldman. Jim Fabian is here with us today. Bond underwriters from Piper Sandler. We also have co-counsel or underwriters from Stifel Nicholas. I know that Renee is here with us today, and there's a host of other lawyers, trustees, actuarials, and attorneys that have to work together to make this work. So it is no small effort. A little bit about the schedule. I'll be wrapping up here very shortly. We just got our rating back from S&P. Every time you issue new bonds, they want to take a new look at how you're handling your money in the city of Indio. And the bad news is they didn't increase our rating. The good news is they didn't lower it. So they took a look at us and they're like, okay, you are where you are. We're in the A rating. We're not AAA rated, but the city's got an underlining AA minus rating, and the bonds will be issued in A plus rating. That should do fine in the market. Today, we're asking you to adopt these resolutions that allow staff to go forward with the expectation that we will be issuing the post-preliminary official statement at the end of this month. So these are bonds, right? And a lot of these have to go to the municipal markets. The underwriters have to find buyers of $145 million. A lot of big mutual funds will be looking at this stuff. That's why we'd have to go to the market. We're hoping to sell bonds. We're hoping to when the official statement goes out, that's when they get the official notice that we're out there, right? Hopefully we get a lot of interest. The more interest we get, the better rates we'll get. Hope to sell bonds the week of July 4th. And then we hope to close this deal the first week of August. Okay, so following the public hearing, we'd like you to approve this issuance. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rockwell. I will now open the public hearing and ask our clerk, do we have any comments?
No, Mayor.
Okay, we have no one online, so I have none here present, so I will close the public hearing and open it up to the council for questions, comments, or a motion.
No wonder they call you. Please go ahead. I mean, this is phenomenal. What a great place to be. What a great dream we're living right now to be able to provide these services, really for our community, particularly police and fire. How awesome is that? Yeah, I know interest rates are going up, but we're still getting some pretty good rates. I mean, this is really fantastic, and I appreciate your effort. And your city manager and everyone here at the city, and to the city of Indio, to every resident out there. It's going to make a difference in the level and quality of services. So fantastic. Thank you.
Any more questions, comments, or?
Well said. Well said. I'm more than happy to make a recommendation. Nobody else?
Okay.
I have questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Remy, do you have comments, questions?
Yes, so city manager needs to take note of the November 1st date for the release of assets that were under previous bond obligations, specifically the Miles Avenue Park. Because if we need to parcel that or subdivide that prior to the reissuance of bonds, that needs to be expedited internally. The other question is if some of the assets that we're potentially proposing as being encumbered by the new obligation bonds are to be potentially torn down for reconstruction, does that really allow us to obligate those bonds? I think that's a legal question.
Yeah, Mayor. Yeah, those are great points. We are keeping a very detailed inventory and list of the assets that have been pledged, that are proposed to be pledged, and we'll continue to monitor that. The benefit of this process is that we will be building new assets. So the new fire station, the dispatch center, the new public safety services building, the city hall library, those will be the new pledged assets when constructed. So the time frame within which these assets will be pledged will be until such time as the new facilities are then built and then available to be the collateral for the LRBs. So this is a very short window, 2 to 3 year period that these properties will be tied up, for lack of a better word. But we will monitor those and make sure, as you suggest, that we're keeping track of the proper dates and when they are available or not for demolition.
Okay, so the transfer of old to new is allowed within the bond process is what you're saying, but specifically what I'm giving you a heads up with is the Miles Park that is currently under obligation and will continue to be under obligation in the new bonds. If we are going to consider some new development on that parcel, we as a city need to consider the parcelization in that small, short window between release of the old obligations and encumbrance of the new obligations. Do you now follow me?
I do. Thank you very much. Well said. And we'll do so.
Okay.
Great. So, Councilmember Miller.
Just before the motion is made, just to make clear that you're adopting a resolution as the city council and you're also adopting a resolution as the public finance authority. And so that language is in the recommendation of the report.
Thank you. And I'll make a motion that the city council adopt resolution 10301, authorizing the financing of public improvement and improving a lease agreement and related documents and actions that the Indio Public Finance Authority Board of Directors adopt resolution 2022-13, authorizing the financing of public improvements and approving a lease agreement and related documents and actions.
I'll second that.
A motion by Councilmember Miller, second by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz. Could I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes?
And City Clerk, will you take a roll call for both the city council and then separately for the Public Financing Authority?
Okay, this is for the resolution, the city council resolution number 10301. Councilmember Holmes?
Aye.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz?
Aye.
And Mayor Furman.
Aye.
Now, the resolution 2022-13. Director Holmes?
Aye.
Director Miller?
Aye.
Director Ramos Amit?
Aye.
And Vice President
Aye.
Ortiz and President Furman.
Aye. Both motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rockwell, the wizard. I guess you're the president. So we'll move on to item 9.5, resolution number 10293, consideration of the appeal of May 11, 2022 Planning Commission approval of the Boulders West LLC design review case number DR 2202-495 to allow 65,000 square foot warehouse located at the southwest corner of Avenue 45 and Golf Center Parkway, and find the project exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15332 of CEQA guidelines. And this will be handled by Director of Community Development, Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. As the Mayor noted, I'm Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. And this evening, as the Mayor indicated, this is a public hearing to consider a appeal of a Planning Commission decision. At this time, I would like to ask Senior Planner Alyssa Suarez to come forward, and she's going to provide you a presentation. Following her presentation, I'm going to make some remarks on a additional letter submitted late today by the appellant. So with that time, Alyssa.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Alyssa Suarez, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Item 9.5, as Director Snyder mentioned, is an appeal of a Planning Commission action that granted approval of a design review for the Boulders West LLC project for a proposed industrial warehouse. Some background for you. On May 11, 2022, the Planning Commission voted 3-0 with 2 commissioners absent to approve the project for the design and site layout of a 65,000 square foot industrial warehouse on Golf Center Parkway and Avenue 45. On May 23, 2022, the appellant, Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, also known as SAFER, submitted an appeal petition challenging the Planning Commission's findings that the project qualifies for exemption under the Class 32 infill development projects exemption under the CEQA guidelines. The appellant specifically argues that there was not enough evidence in the record to make the finding that the project would not have a significant impact on biological resources or air quality, which are required findings to qualify for the Class 32 exemption. Additionally, there are exceptions to use of an exemption. The appellant argues that because not enough evidence has been provided to support the claim that the project will not have an impact on biological resources or air quality, that this presents an unusual circumstance that would not allow for the use of the Class 32 exemption. The focus of today's presentation is to present the facts of the project and staff's analysis for utilizing the Class 32 exemption that the Planning Commission approved. Again, some background on the project here. It is located on the southwest corner of Golf Center Parkway and Avenue 45. The approval of the design review included a 65,000 square foot warehouse with no tenant identified at this time. The land use for this site is Workplace and Employment District under the current General Plan 2040. And it also has a zoning of Industrial Park District where a warehouse is principally permitted in this zone. This is an overview of the approved site plan for the project. It shows the footprint of a one-story, 59,000 square foot warehouse building with the 6,000 square foot mezzanine. The project does comply with all of the industrial park standards, including the setbacks off of Avenue 45 and Golf Center Parkway. This slide shows the architectural renderings of the approved architecture for the proposed warehouse, as well as the hues that was approved by the Planning Commission. So in order to qualify for the Class 32 CEQA exemption, staff analyzed this project for consistency with the CEQA guidelines. Class 32, Section A requires that a project is consistent with applicable general plan and zoning designations. This project, as I previously mentioned, is principally permitted in the industrial park zone. It is also consistent with the development standards of the industrial park zone. Additionally, the project has been found to be consistent with the workplace and employment district, since this designation supports industrial uses as well as office spaces, which is incorporated in this project. Additionally, the city certified and adopted an EIR or environmental impact report for the 2040 general plan. The uses under the workplace and employment district were fully contemplated and assessed under that EIR. Therefore, it can be found that this project is consistent with the environmental analysis that was conducted under that environmental impact report, and it further meets the requirements for Section A of the Class 32 exemption. Section B of Class 32 CEQA exemption requires that a project occur within city limits on a project site of no more than 5 acres, substantially surrounded by urban uses. The project site is located within the city of Indio across 3 separate parcels totaling approximately 3.84 acres. This is consistent with the maximum 5-acre qualification requirement for this exemption. The subject site is surrounded by properties developed with existing urban land uses and public street right-of-ways. Existing commercial industrial buildings bound the project site to the north, the west, the south, and Golf Center Parkway is directly to the east of this site. These are all uses identified as an urbanized setting described by CEQA. Section C of the Class 32 exemption requires that a project site has no value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species. This site is currently vacant. Based on materials presented by the applicant, this site was previously graded in 2003 and 2004. Additionally, staff has reviewed a rough grading plan permit that was approved by the engineering division for this site for a project that was ultimately not completed. However, grading did occur on this site during that time under that issuance of that grading plan. Staff has also visited the site, identified native shrubbery, including creosote bush, and non-native invasive species, including tamarisk. These species are not classified as rare, endangered, or threatened species. Further, the site was classified as urban and rural developed land under the General Plan 2040 EIR mapping efforts, specifically with respect to vegetation and land cover, as shown on this map. The project, as I had previously mentioned, is located between developed properties to the west and to the south and 2 major roads on both frontages of the property of Golf Center Parkway and Avenue 45. Further, the General Plan 2040 EIR also identifies conservation areas that are home to protected species under the Coachella Valley Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan. The subject parcel is located directly outside of any mapped conservation and protection areas, as shown on this figure here. Therefore, staff has determined that due to the previous disturbance of the site, a review of previous permits issued for this site from previous projects, and a review of the land mapping efforts for the general plan, no impacts to threatened, rare, or endangered species will occur as a result of this project. Section D of the Class 32 exemption requires approval of a project would not result in any significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. With respect to traffic, the city has adopted the County of Riverside's Transportation Analysis Guidelines for the Vehicle Miles Traveled, or VMTs. Pursuant to these guidelines, warehouse buildings less than 208,000 square feet in size are presumed to cause a less than significant impact and can be screened out from further environmental analysis. The proposed warehouse is 65,000 square feet in size. Therefore, it can be determined that the project will have a less than significant impact when compared to the adopted standards. With respect to noise, the project site is projected to have a 50 to 65 exterior noise level according to the city's general plan 2040 EIR land use compatibility standards. This is within the acceptable noise rating for industrial uses. And with respect to air quality, the project is located within the South Coast Air Basin, which is under the jurisdiction of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. In order to comply with the standards of the Air Quality District, all construction sites in the city of Indio need a dust control plan, which is also referred to as a fugitive dust control plan for PM10. The project is conditioned to comply with these requirements. Additionally, under the city's adopted VMT thresholds, warehouse uses of 208,000 square feet in size is equivalent to 2,995 total metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is under the air district threshold of 3,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. This project is substantially smaller than 208,000 square feet in size. Therefore, it can be presumed to have caused a less than significant impact on air quality, and no further study is necessary. With respect to water quality, there are no water courses or wetlands on site. The project site is located within the Valley Sanitary District service boundaries, who is responsible for wastewater collection and treatment services for the proposed project. The project is also conditioned to comply with all local, state, and federal regulations and guidelines. In addition, the preliminary water quality management plan for the project was reviewed by the engineering division. As conditioned, this project will be designed to meet the city's water quality standards for retaining water quality, stormwater on site via retention basins. Compliance with these standards will ensure that no impacts to water quality will occur. Section E of the Class 32 CEQA exemption requires that a project site be adequately served by all required utilities and public services. This site has domestic water availability and sanitary sewer on both the Gulf Center and Avenue 45 frontages. It also has an existing sewer easement located on the west side of the property, and there is also access to electrical power from the Imperial Irrigation District along both Gulf Center and Avenue 45 frontages. This site has been designed to store all stormwater runoff within the site, so there's no need to access any public storm drain facilities. The site also has access to communication facilities, and it can be adequately served by police and fire services. Therefore, staff has found that this site is consistent with the Section E for the Class 32 exemption. So furthermore, in order to qualify for an exemption under CEQA, there must not be any exceptions that apply to the project. The exceptions to the exemptions are based on a number of factors, one of them being the location, another being whether the project will have a cumulative impact on the surrounding area, whether there is a significant effect due to an unusual circumstance, whether the project will have an impact on a scenic highway, whether it will occur within a hazardous waste site, or whether it would have an adverse impact on historical resources. Staff has found that none of the exceptions to the exemptions exist. There is no unusual circumstance that applies to this project. The project is located within an industrial park that is intended for this type of development. Also, the land has been previously disturbed. It's not in pristine condition. There are no water courses that would present any impact on the environment. Therefore, staff upholds the Planning Commission's decision to find the project exempt, utilizing the Class 32 exemption. The project is consistent with the industrial park zone standards, as well as the workplace and employment land use designation. Based on the evidence in the record and the analysis shared with you in this staff report, staff does not believe the appeal petition presented by the appellant has any reasonable reasonable basis that would require staff to perform further environmental analysis, and is therefore requesting that the City Council deny the request for the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's decision to approve the project and determine that it's exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the Class 32 CEQA exemption. And now Director Snyder will remark on a public comment we received. Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Planner Suarez. So, as the council may be aware, but for the public record, at 3:35 p.m. today, the city received via an email to Senior Planner Suarez an 84-page letter, which I'm holding in my hand. This information was not provided in the original Planning Commission public hearing, nor was it part of the original appellant's application for this appeal hearing this evening. We also have confirmed with the project applicant that there was no attempt on the part of the appellant to reach out in advance to speak with them about the concerns raised in this letter or to identify any potential resolutions to the concerns raised. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty and perhaps be a little bit repetitive to what Senior Planner Suarez says, but I want to highlight several things because I think it's important for the record. First, I want to assure you that I and the entire community development team take our job seriously for the implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act. As evidenced by the detailed presentation you received by Senior Planner Suarez, staff applied a very detailed lens in determining whether or not this particular project qualified for the Class 32 exemption. We understand and we appreciate that when projects are proposed for development in our city, there has to be a balancing of the proposed project against the environmental concerns addressed in the adopted California Environmental Quality Act standards. In this letter, there is two elements. One is the portion submitted by the law firm summarizing a other element of a detailed report by Dr. Sean Smallwood. And I want to note that these are the professional opinions of Dr. Smallwood as an individual consultant to the appellant. I also want to point out for the record that because of the late submittal of the letter into the record, my comments are going to be summary. I want to reiterate what Senior Planner Suarez talked to you about. As part of the 2019 adoption of the city's general plan, the city conducted a comprehensive environmental impact report. For those council members that were present, you may remember that was a 5-year effort. We took seriously and we conducted a voluminous study. We have 3 binders, 5-inch binders full of documentation of environmental impact of that general plan. As Senior Planner Suarez noted, in order to apply the Class 32 exemption, you have to meet certain standards. And I'm going to focus on just one of them because I think it's important. In the letter submitted today, there is significant discussion about the term special species. This is a term, as noted in the letter, that is used by a scientific community to represent a professional opinion that certain species should be considered special and or should be perhaps even nominated for a certain classification. That classification is known as endangered, rare, or threatened species. Again, the special species term is a scientific characterization. It does not connotate a designation of endangered, rare, or threatened. That occurs either by federal action or by state action. So the mere presence of species on property does not mean that they automatically are designated or qualify for that type of designation. As noted by Senior Planner Suarez, this site has been previously disturbed. And in the EIR, that was done, or environmental impact report that was done for the general plan, there was a section of biological analysis. In that analysis, this site was not identified as a qualifying site for endangered, rare, or threatened species designation. And that was also noted by Senior Planner Suarez. I want to repeat for the record that the presence of identified bird species or other species by that identification alone does not qualify as a federal or state action designating either a site or a species for a classification of endangered, rare, or threatened. I also think it's important to note that, as Senior Planner Suarez noted, that this project is consistent with the general plan that the City Council adopted. It's also consistent with the zoning that the City Council adopted. The city's traffic engineer reviewed this and determined that there were not significant traffic impacts as noted by Senior Planner Suarez. If he had determined there would be, we would have not applied the Class 32 exemption. This project was also determined not to have significant impacts to water quality, air, noise, and in the general plan environmental impact report, there was an entire chapter devoted to noise. Again, this analyzed the land use designations applied to properties throughout the city. And this determined that this particular property and the use plan for this property would not result in significant noise impacts. I also want to remind the council and the public that when projects come in for development action, there are multiple steps. One of the steps that comes after the land use or the planning entitlements is review and consideration by the city engineer and his team. That requires the submittal of a water quality management plan, which is a detailed plan of how water quality will be addressed on that specific site. This water quality management plan is generally applied to development throughout the city. So it's not unique to the site, but it is common. So therefore it is applied. It also qualifies for the preparation of a stormwater pollution prevention plan. Again, another element of consideration, planning, and management of stormwater. So in conclusion, City Council, I believe that staff did conduct an appropriate application of the Class 32 CEQA exemption. I believe this was done based on a foundation of analysis that was conducted as part of the city's environmental impact report for the general plan and the application of that information and findings from that environmental impact report to this specific site. So as noted by Senior Planner Suarez, staff does believe and does continue to recommend that the council deny the appeal presented to you. And with that, I or Senior Planner Suarez are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. This is a public hearing item. So I will open the public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have any public comments?
No comments, Mayor.
No comments. Okay, I will close the public hearing and ask, do we have the appellant? Is the appellant on? Do they wish to speak?
Amalia? She is on Zoom.
Hi.
And she just raised her hand.
So can you
Do I need to reopen? Yeah. So I will reopen the public hearing and allow the appellant to make comment.
Ms. Fuentes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Amalia Boli Fuentes. I'm an attorney with Lizzo Drury here on behalf of Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, or SAFER. We submitted our comment earlier this afternoon, and I will give an overview of our written comment. We're not opposed to the project, but we request that the city prepare an EIR for the project or an MND because we do not believe that it meets the requirements for the CEQA infill exemption. As stated earlier, the exemption does not apply if the site has value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species. The comment letter we submitted earlier includes comments from wildlife biologist Dr. Sean Smallwood, who identified numerous species on site, including special status species. One of the species identified by Dr. Smallwood is identified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a bird of conservation concern, and several others that Dr. Smallwood identified are listed on the California Department of Fish and Game's Special Animals list. These species are considered rare, and Dr. Smallwood photographed them on site and in some cases as they were feeding new chicks. Dr. Smallwood also identified other flaws with the city's assessment of biological resources, including an inadequate baseline and a failure to analyze impacts on lost breeding capacity and potential wildlife mortalities from traffic generated by the project. The city has therefore not met one of the mandatory conditions of the infill exemption and must prepare an initial study to determine the appropriate level of environmental review under CEQA. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the City Council reject the use of the infill exemption and required preparation of an EIR or an MND. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any other further comments online?
No other comments, Mayor.
No comments online. And I do have one present, Mr. Benjamin Egan.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Benjamin Egan. I am the applicant's engineer and the land planner on this case. Want to just address a few things. I want to thank staff for their thorough and diligent review of the project and their presentation to you this evening. We have received no engagement from the law firm or the Supporting Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, except for the 2 communications which were delivered 11th hour, which has made it very difficult for us to respond. But we did do a little bit of homework. The Safer organization, according to the January 19th Long Beach Post, it published that it's funded by Southern California District Council of Laborers, which is a regional umbrella group for local construction unions. We found information on Lizao Drury, the attorney representing them. They are based out of Oakland. They have represented hundreds of union firms in what we consider questionable environmental challenges. So basically, our position on this is that the Safer organization itself is not local. It is based out of our best research, because it's anonymous and there's not much on it, Covina. The law firm is out of Oakland. We looked up their 2019 tax return and found a contribution revenue of exactly $700,000. I would question if they have a single individual donor and if they are a legitimate environmental group. Media has reported that this law firm has a long history of weaponizing CEQA to challenge findings by local governments with the interest or ulterior motive of exacting either a contribution or a mandate that union labor is used. So it is our belief as the applicant that this challenge is not without merit, that it is an attempt to do something else. We also would like to just bring to the council briefly, there are other projects in this immediate vicinity they have approved within the past 15 years. The BMC lumber yards are immediately adjacent to this. The commercial condominiums located on the southeast corner were built recently. The TKV project disturbs more acreage than this. It was recently done. The Ring Power Cat improvements, which are now operated by Cat Entertainment Services, disturb more land area than this. And Find Food Bank is located right around the corner. And they are already under contract with me to pursue some possible expansion. They would propose a similar size building. And so I want to ask the council if they really would tell them that you would not let them build a facility that the community so desperately needs. So thank you for entertaining our comments this evening.
Thank you, sir. I do not have any further comments present. So I will close the public hearing and open it up for council for discussion, questions, or a motion. Questions, comments? None? Motion?
I'll move approval of staff recommendation to deny the appeal for the project as specified in the application resolution number 10293.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. And can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes?
Aye.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz?
Aye.
And Mayor Furman?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have any comments?
No, Mayor.
No comments online, and we have none present. So we'll move on to the next item, was adjournment. And before we, yeah, excuse me. Okay, yeah. But before we adjourn, I just want to recognize our fallen in a moment of silence, 2 officers and the 5 U.S. Marine Corps officers soldiers, excuse me, who we tragically lost over this last week. So if I could ask everyone to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Those officers' names from El Monte Police Department were Joseph Santana and Corporal Michael Paredes. And the U.S. soldiers who we lost were Corporal Rasmussen, Lance Corporal Strickland, Captain Sachs, Captain Lasapio, and Corporal Carlson. May they rest in peace. So our next council meeting, joint council meeting of IWA, is July 20th, 2022. If we have no further comments by council, that would adjourn our meeting.